like logic and rhetoric.
Do we need to? I mean, I could start nitpicking the parenting of you if we want to.
Go ahead.
We could go all at
My
each other.
father's deceased. Go ahead. Go after him in the grave. It's 11 months.
So is mine. Let's talk
ago.
about our dead fathers.
Yeah.
My God, this is already gone off the rails.
I have some Stillman statistics if you'd like. I came prepared because I knew you were going to make the show about Stillman.
Okay.
So I figured it might as well be funny.
Okay.
Instead of like you, like a reverend, like we're in the church of Stillman. Everyone kneeling down, genuflecting.
What you got?
I have a breakdown of Stillman's audience.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah. Good Lord.
11.5% fans.
Okay.
All right. This is
fans of Stillman?
Yeah, of him or the show.
Okay.
A few friends.
Okay.
Some women who he's lied to about his salary.
What percentage is that?
No, these are all in the 11.5%.
Cool.
Other 26-year-old men who now have similar dreams. Like, oh my God, I could get a show in a big city with just like wild conspiracy theories, like Mike Vrabel was forced by the NFL to let Terrell Williams coach a preseason game. I could just make up stuff like that and have a radio show in a major city like Nashville.
I forgot about that one.
So that's 11.5%. I hope these numbers add up. 65% people that listen out of habit, like I bite my fingernails.
Okay.
It's just like it's what they.
That's a healthy percentage.
It's what they do.
Okay, that's a big number, but okay.
15% have broken radios that are just stuck on your station. It also benefits you guys. And
you think this is like 1933
Caroline
with like the
Mason,
Victrola or whatever? Yeah.
Dude, have you looked at the
listen
cars
to my
on the
programs.
road? I mean, I just passed a Pinto driving here.
Well, in
there are
fairness,
some bad cars on the road.
If you're getting your car worked on, I mean, they were working on PK's
radio.
car for 6 months, and the radio could have been stuck there, too.
And 8.5% that are having podcast issues.
Podcast issues.
People that are having podcast issues.
Okay.
So
they can't get their podcast.
With their own podcast?
No, they can't get their podcast
Okay.
to work, which is what they'd really like to be listening to, but they're listening to Stilly instead.
You actually spent time on this. Interesting.
I did. In the car, because I said, what am I going to say when Rexrode wants to do some like opening reverent thing to Stilly?
I still want the answer to
Yeah, see, I should have had phase 2 ready to go, but I didn't put enough work into it. I was working on some Derrick Henry stuff because we're going to talk sports.
Have you ever seen the movie? It's what?
Now he's going to bring up an obscure movie that I didn't see or memorize.
Yeah, calm down over there. So you've never seen it? 50 Shades of Grey?
No.
You?
No.
Ian?
You and your wife on a big date night?
Well, we haven't. I haven't seen it. I have not seen it. I was trying to figure out.
Let's
first
discuss
of
it
all,
thoroughly.
like is that
film none of us have seen?
But is that song? Like is that like when there's like clothes about to be taken off?
Couldn't tell you.
I have no idea.
And where are you with your
Maybe
phone?
we'll have to find out. You're a big movie guy. You can watch it.
I'm
this
more
weekend.
of a 9.5 weeks guy.
Report back.
Kim Basinger, nice. Good call.
PK, we normally
Gen
got
X,
you
there we go.
1 hour a week. I am very much looking forward to 4 hours of PK today. It's going to be fun.
I have a big Diet Dr. Pepper here. Hopefully it'll get me through. Very bad an inconvenience market I went to.
An inconvenience market.
The woman who was cleaning up was offended that I wanted a straw, and then when all she could offer me was a straw that's for a Slurpee, she was offended that I didn't want a Slurpee straw for my regular drink. So when I get to the bottom of this drink, it's going to be a real incident.
It's going to be a real problem.
The last half inch of this drink is going to be an
real issue.
Wow.
Well, Joe, should we play the clip that I think you've been dying to hear for like 2 years in honor of your reverence of Stillman as we begin the program today? I think we found it yesterday. You've been arguing with him about the salary cap for like 2.5 years at this point.
See, this is where the logic and rhetoric fails him because he doesn't understand the salary cap, so he just dismisses it.
Did we have an admission that the salary cap is real by Jared Stillman yesterday? We'll let you all be the judge. Here's what he had to say on the Stillman and Company program yesterday.
There's no company.
I really feel like it's realistic that a fresh start would be best for everybody. Before they use the high draft choice, before they spend the 100, because everybody's like they're going to have $100 million in cap space. Well, what that means, if you really want to spend $100 million in cap dollars, is really $200 million in real money. Do you think they're going to spend that? I don't know, but if you do, like that's a lot of money to spend, and you only get one crack at that. So if this is your crack at you trust the guys that gave you Andre Dillard to go out there and get you something better?
He doesn't understand the salary cap at all.
Wait. Hold, Ian, wait. Did he say the last chance? Was that in there?
Yeah, were you listening?
Okay.
One crack at it, something like that.
Yeah. There we go. That's it. One crack at it. That's an admission that the salary cap exists. Am I wrong?
I mean, I don't know why else there would be one crack at it,
Right?
if it doesn't exist.
Exactly. The whole point of the argument, and again, Jared does have some good. Jared's right that, and Paul, I think you would agree. Everyone in the NFL talks cap, and in some cases it's not cap, right? I mean, like every move is sort of it's attributed to the cap, right? Sometimes it's just like you don't want to pay someone, or right. So it's not. So everything is called cap. and
Everything that's
sometimes
attributed to the cap isn't the cap.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean there's no cap.
No, I know, Paul. I know. I'm on your side, okay? So but then he takes it to the point like you can just kick the can forever and ever. You don't ever make decisions that are cap-related. All garbage. I mean, that's all not true. I think he just admitted that he realizes that there's a cap, that there's a finite element to the whole thing.
I don't care what he realizes. Like the
I
earth
know
is
you
round.
don't.
So he's saying, well, some of these decisions. What he wanted was the Titans to redo Ryan Tannehill's number to create money for this year, so that they could have made more moves, which would have just pushed more Ryan Tannehill money into the future. Well, at a certain point, you stop doing that to get yourself the fresh start that he's talking about, which is a revelation to him.
Right.
All of a sudden today, which the rest of us realized a long time ago, which the rest of us realized in 2001 when they cut Samari Roll and Derek Mason, who just walked out of this room.
Yeah.
Is he unfamiliar with that?
Now the
'Cause
cap
it
was
pre his
different,
birth?
but it was different then. You could not do all this. You weren't as flexible then as since the last CBA.
But
so that's
his dear
which
friend,
is good analysis.
His dear friend, may he rest in peace, Floyd Reese, insisted that every team was going to have a giant reckoning like that, where they had to cut 6 great players, and every team, in fact, did not have a giant reckoning like that. Most teams did not have a giant reckoning like that. And that was mismanagement by Floyd and a bad anticipation and understanding of how the cap was going to come to be. But at a certain point, you have to stop pushing money forward. He uses New Orleans as an example, and he says, well, New Orleans keeps doing it. New Orleans keeps doing it. Well, who cares what New Orleans is doing? New Orleans sucks right now. So they're in the same situation the Titans are in, except they don't have $100 million coming free.
Right.
So who would you rather be, the Titans or New Orleans? I'd rather be the Titans.
Well, you know what is great when it comes to the salary cap discussion? You know what's great to not have to do because you manage the cap wisely is kick the can down the road where you don't have to redo all those contracts, and you don't have to extend people to get their cap number down where you're not putting in that situation.
What you want to do with these new contracts is front load.
Yes.
Or be able to pay people now for what they're doing now.
Right.
And go forward that way and not pay them later for what they did now.
And
which is what the Titans have done for the last several years.
And a good
Julio Jones being on the payroll this year, I still believe. A bunch of dead money.
Sure. Now, another good point that Jared has made, which is, there's no, but no, we're taking over Jared's time slot. I think that we should show our respect.
At what point do we stop bowing?
Well,
after this segment,
but it's relevant to the discussion because there are differences in payrolls. The payrolls differ right from the cap hits because obviously you do contracts a certain way. If you are an owner who has that cap space, it also matters, even if you believe what Jared believes or some iteration of it. Because publicly, you cannot – I mean, you don't have to spend all of it, but publicly you cannot justify not going out and spending money, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there it is. We all see the cap space. Different than the NHL. NHL is very cut and dry. This is it. That you
hard
get
cap.
to this. Yeah. But, I mean, I think that, like Amy Adams Strunk, if it's a cheap owner thing, because there are owners who are cheaper than other owners, well – you got to go spend.
Well, by the way, they're not spending $100 million.
Well, sure, I'm sure they won't. But they need to spend a good chunk of it.
Yeah. But there's only there's only so much worth it, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
They need to overpay 3 guys probably to get them. But they're not going to overpay 8 guys.
Right.
Or drastically overpay 8.
They should overpay T. Higgins.
Yeah, but T. Higgins isn't getting the free agency. People need to end
You
that.
sure of that?
I feel 85% certain that for Cincinnati, Cincinnati to remain Cincinnati, which is a good team, the team that passed Sewell to get Chase to be what they are, that they should do everything in their power to have Burrow and Chase and Higgins together.
I
Maybe
agree.
you let Boyd walk,
But it does seem
but
like
you keep those 3 guys together at all costs, and you do what you have to do elsewhere. And most teams that are good have to make those choices and say, these 5 guys, these 3 guys, they stay no matter what. And we fiddle with everything else around it.
I agree with that.
They
Now,
can want
Charles
to do
Robinson makes it sound like he believes Higgins is going to be a free agent. He doesn't think they're going to get that have that work out in Cincinnati.
Calvin
We'll
Ridley's
see.
my guy.
There's
for the
also
Titans.
okay, that's not bad. There's also the tag him, trade him thing that Cincinnati may have to do. I mean, we'll see.
There's a lot.
But the point being, that's the type of guy, right?
Right.
I mean, you got to get people we know are good.
We're
Michael
off and running.
Pittman is a guy who fits kind of the Titans mold, who I don't want.
No.
Because he's not. Calvin Ridley's faster. I want speed.
Which is something that
Actual speed, not the kind of speed that they say, well, this guy, because we operate faster, will be faster.
Yeah, actual foot speed.
I mean, I still can't believe that was said if you think about it now. Oh, they're in and out of the huddle faster. What a faster team. Look how much faster they are because NWI is lining up on the line.
He knows exactly where to go when he's lining
And
up.
they've got no huddle 7 times this year. My God, they're blazing.
He runs a 4-3 from the huddle to the line. It's amazing.
We're off and running on Robby and Rexrode. 4 hours of Robby and Rexrode today. Paul Kaharski from paulkaharski.com will be with us for the entire program. We'll continue the conversation on the Titans coming up next, including a reckoning that I think I need to have with the fan base here, and we'll see if Joe and Paul agree. We'll get into that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode. We are live from our 102.5 The Game studio, brought to you by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com, commandeering the Stillman and Company program for one day. Do we think Joe's done with the laundry list of praise he's given to Jared after one segment?
I think he's probably got one per segment that he'll be sneaking in. That's my prediction.
I think we're good. I think
Just put on another layer.
I think that's a good topic of conversation, and I really appreciate Jared finally, admitting that he was wrong. He also admitted he was wrong this week, Robby.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe this. I texted him at the time. He talked about John Robinson getting fired, and he's like, well, soon after that, I realized that, the plane from Green Bay, he didn't say that, but it's like, there was nothing, but it was just performance. And I texted him. I said, dude, you just came on our show 2 weeks ago and talked about the plane from Green Bay again.
Yep.
What in the hell?
I don't know.
He's wired for conspiracy. People that age, I'm going to keep bringing up the age because that
he's like the same age as Robby.
He's older than me.
Robby is he really?
Yeah, he's like 34
Robby
or something.
is
31.
mature for his age.
Are you
Because
really 3 years
people
younger
that
than me?
age are
Robby's
big
an
on
old
the-
soul.
big on the tinfoil hat stuff, and there's got to be. He needs to be sat down, strapped to a chair, and taught Occam's razor.
That's true, Paul. But like when you were in high school, there were people who were like, "That moon landing is not real." So
There
come
weren't
on.
many at my high school. I don't know. At your high school, I guess there were.
Yeah, maybe. Did you go to
I went to a prep
Columbia?
school.
Oh, okay. Oh, well.
A lot of fake moon landers
at
at
you.
Columbia.
No, I didn't meet any.
I mean, Columbia
I've
is where
never
they
met a fake moonlander in person.
yeah, I'm sure you have. Columbia is where they have like the parapsychology, right? The Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
That's the Columbia's claim to fame. That and PK.
Yeah, that's Columbia's claim to fame. Yeah.
You and Dan Aykroyd,
go.
geniuses both.
Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Cam. Cam, good morning. Thanks for calling in. Or good afternoon.
So
I got to
first
stop
of
saying
all-
good morning.
Yeah,
Cam.
you
Keep
do.
saying
That's
it's
all right.
fun.
You
It's
do.
charming.
It's fine.
First of all, Joe, I appreciate you taking up for Jared because honestly, my favorite segment is Jared versus Joe. And there's times where I'm listening, I'm like, dude, Joe's pretty pissed, and I think it's real. But listen, I want everybody to in the Nashville airwaves. PK, you don't trust the guy that broke up the Beatles. Paul McCarthy broke up the Beatles, and you don't trust anybody named Paul McCarthy.
McCarthy. Were you listening to us a great deal after we left?
I don't even know what's going on here.
Wait,
He's
are
saying
you
I
calling-
broke up.
Okay.
He's giving me
I'm
a
with
funny name, but he's saying I broke up the old 180 trio.
Okay.
How much were you listening to us after we left the other station?
Well, if you're talking, I'm not listening at all.
These are
So I
direct
broke up the
hits.
Beatles, who were great, but you weren't listening to us. You're making
No,
a lot
but
of
you-
sense
you-
here.
That's pretty good though. So basically, he's just going. He
He
goes.
hated the Beatles.
Your name is Paul McCarthy.
It doesn't even make sense. McSwarthy? McSwarthy? What are you saying?
He's making a shark joke,
Oh, McSharty. Okay.
right?
All right, so that's kind of funny if it's audible, but your phone sounds like you're calling from the moon.
A lot of
More
moon
moon
talk
talk.
today.
Yeah, a lot of moon talk. All right, so
not
you're
even getting to
angry that
PK
I
and
broke
Titans
up the
locker room.
trio, but I'm asking you, but you say you never listen if I was speaking. So how upset could you have been?
Well, no, I mean, I don't like it when you bash on Jared because Joe bashes on
Well, this
Jared.
is a
and I
different
respect
subject.
that.
Let's stick with one subject.
No, because I respect when Joe bashes Jared, but then when you come in there,
But what
do
about
is raise
breaking
your
up the
voice.
Beatles? You're making it breaking
all
up the
you do is
Beatles,
wait-
crack, and you won't finish it. I'm asking you
Because
questions
your
about
name-
that.
Because your name is Paul McCarthy. You
This guy
sharded.
just going in
It's
circles. He
Paul.
just wants to repeat his lines.
Thank you,
But,
Cam.
yeah.
Appreciate
No,
it.
it was an excellent effort, but it's 0 for execution.
That was pretty good.
Let's go back to our 102.5 The Game
Broke up the
phone line.
Beatles, but he hates the Beatles. He never listened, especially when McCartney was singing.
Welcome in Ed from Jersey. Ed, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Jersey, nice.
I did it again.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Jeez. And it's just, to me, it's fool's gold. I mean, we all know that there are never great players that hit free agency. So, in my mind, what if it's the same approach as they did last year? They sign one guy like a key type, and then they go out and they fill in depth with maybe these guys that are just coming off contracts. And we're behind other starters, and do the same thing over again with the approach that, hey, we're losing all these guys this year in free agency. Maybe we get comp picks for the following year. And maybe us as Titan fans need to reassess this timeline and, period of rebuild to more of a 2 to 3 year approach.
Yep.
How do they turn into a comp pick team? You got to lose guys who get good money and good playing time. So,
they got something coming this year, right?
I don't think so.
No,
Because,
I thought they had something coming this year.
But no, they don't have anything coming this year. And to turn into a comp team, you got to develop guys and then have them leave for big contracts and big playing time. It'd be a drastic change in strategy. I don't think it makes any sense. There aren't great players at great positions. I don't think there are great cornerbacks. There's certainly not a great left tackle.
No.
But there are some good receivers out there who could be certainly number 2s to a top draft pick, and certainly top 3 receivers with Hopkins and a top draft pick. There you can get better at inside linebacker very easily. You could get better at cornerback, even if not premier, like with a guy like Murphy Bunting. And then they're going to resign guys like you would hope, Murphy Bunting and Aziz. So they've got plenty of work to do. There's no reason for them to take the approach they took last year.
The spending doesn't have to be a huge – I mean, if you can get a great player, sometimes great players get in free agency, but your roster in such bad shape that you have to rebuild your depth, and you have to do it partially through free agency. You have to.
Here's a position they could spend on. Backup quarterback. Josh Dobbs is going to be a free agent. Jacoby Brissett is going to be a free agent. Gardner Minshew is going to be a free agent. Go get one of those 3 guys who will cost a backup premium price to have behind Will Levis if Will Levis goes down, so that you could win a couple games if Will Levis goes down, instead of having the crap that they've had at backup quarterback during Mike Vrabel's entire tenure.
Well, here's one thing you're not going to find in free agency, and that's an elite starting left tackle.
Right.
Those guys don't get the free agency.
So you have to draft them.
You're going to have to draft those guys. So when you talk about the most obvious need right now for the Titans, you're not finding that in free agency, which is why, barring something incredibly unforeseen, they're going to take a tackle with their first pick overall, because those guys just don't make it to free agency.
Well, are they? They're probably not high enough for the top 2 tackles. Is the 3rd tackle worthy of that spot?
Are you sure?
Well, I mean, I don't see the teams in front of them.
I just saw the Pats win last night. Looking good. Looking good, Bailey Zappi.
I don't see the teams in front of them finding a way to get behind them.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. You know how it
not
is.
so much that they
look,
play poorly enough to.
I'm really sad that we're getting in a draft talk, but I quickly will say, you could see. You could see a freaking Jaden Daniels, right? Like, quarterbacks sometimes push people back. I mean, Aroma Dunze from Washington, he's the number 2 receiver. He's wide receiver 1 most years. So you probably are right, but weird stuff does happen, especially the QB thing, right? If some teams all of a sudden want to trade up into there because they love J.J. McCarthy or Jaden Daniels or Bo Nix, that's where you actually had
let
8.
Let the quarterbacks rise.
Sure.
Let the quarterbacks rise.
You could still get the left tackle. My God, we just talked about the draft. I'm sorry.
There is one part of this team, though, that I've heard this kind of echoing out from some of the Titans fan base that kind of drives me a little bit nuts, and we'll get into that.
We were supposed to get into that.
We're going to get into that.
Nice
We just kind of
tease.
skipped.
Well teased.
Appreciate it. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Paul Kuharski, Ian Safar here with you on this Friday. Taking your thoughts on the Titans, 615-737-1025, our phone number. There is one thing coming out of the Titans fan base that's starting to drive me nuts a little bit, and I saw some of this a little bit after the Panthers game, more after they lost this game against Indianapolis. You're 4-8, you're dead last in the division. It's not good. Everybody recognizes that. But this idea like this is the worst Titans team that we've ever seen, or that this Titans team is potentially the worst team in the history of the franchise, we got to stop that stuff. Like, we're all prisoners of the moment, and PK, you could speak to this better than I can, but I remember watching the Ken Whisenhunt era and how bad that was, and this is not that. You have DeAndre Hopkins to watch. You have Derrick Henry to watch. You have a rookie quarterback that potentially could be your answer. And there was a time under Whisenhunt you had Delaney Walker. That's about it. There wasn't a whole lot after that. So let's chill out a little bit on the worst Titans team we've ever seen.
They're 11-18 in these 2 years. They were 5-25 in Whisenhunt's 2 years. That spilled into Malarkey because he got fired halfway into the second year.
It's nice of you to make sure Malarkey gets those 2 losses at the end.
That's a 167 winning percentage. That they were playoff less for a good stretch there too, culminating in those 2 years. Here they're having 2 terrible years after they went to the playoffs 4 times in 5 years. The recency bias, like, people are just completely out of touch with that.
There's also a spoiled aspect to it, though, right? It's kind of like the Preds.
They're entitled somehow.
People weren't happy with the Preds just getting the playoffs anymore once they made a Stanley Cup final, right? I mean, you raise expectations when you make a run like they did, right?
Yeah.
That's part of it.
And look, you're entitled to be utterly disappointed after the Cincinnati game. That was their best chance ever to maybe go to the Super Bowl. I mean, you could look at all the AFC Championships games. Obviously, you're closer. But the idea of hosting an AFC Championship game, being that close, defensively having dominated Cincinnati the way you did with the 9 sacks and a couple more that were wiped away by penalties and all of that. So the crash maybe feels bigger. The crash is bigger because you've crashed from great stuff where Whisenhunt inherited a bad team and made it worse. Fisher in 04 and 05, went 9-23, but that's after 4 playoff appearances in 5 years also. So he's crashing from contention.
And surviving, by the way. So
yeah,
I mean, the Fisher into that is kind of reminiscent of Vrabel now, right?
Yes.
Now, there is one thing, though, like, if you're a Titans fan and Cam kind of brought this up earlier. I mean, Ed kind of brought this up earlier. But if you're looking ahead, you look around the division, and you've got C.J. Stroud playing at a borderline league MVP level. Jacksonville, when they're healthy, looks good. Not great, but they look good. And then there's Indianapolis with Anthony Richardson. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like. Like, the idea of how long are we going to be stuck here? Like, how long are we going to be at the bottom of this division based on the way that everything else is going? That's fair to me. Like, wondering how quickly you can dig yourself out of this, and if you have the right people in place to dig yourself out of this. I think it's fair if you're a Titans fan.
Well, I that's absolutely fair. But, things don't go on steady lines very often. So C.J. Stroud, absolutely fantastic. Haven't seen him live yet. Going to see him twice. But is he automatically on a 45-degree incline, or do troubles arrive in his second season? And does he twist an ankle somewhere along the way? And does everything that's gone right for Houston this year go right for Houston next year? And does Trevor Lawrence's ankle right now change course for Jacksonville, which a minute ago looked like it could be the number 1 seed in the AFC, and now could lose the division to Houston because of it? And Anthony Richardson, I'm not super impressed with. And the Colts have done a good job of getting to 7-5. But I'm not real impressed with the Colts, and I don't think it'll be hard for the Titans if they do a good job this offseason. Huge caveat. If they do a good job this offseason, being on even footing at least with the Colts. Now they're going to get a 4th-place schedule, and the 4th-place schedule, last I checked, isn't very favorable. because it brings them Cincinnati at home, and it brings them Justin Herbert again. Yeah. Those aren't games you want as the last place team.
Yeah, but that's and also with Belichick, who has been traded there after then Vrabel traded the Patriots. So
Or
there's so
Harbaugh
many
coming
things.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
It
he's
could be
throwing
Harbaugh
for
coming in.
400 yards either way.
Hey, they did a good job against him this year.
Yeah.
They did. Yeah, so the hopelessness, because I totally agree with Robby, your premise, which is like, guys, it's tough right now. It's ugly, but, I mean, you have a quarterback. I mean, actually, even Whisenhunt, though, like at least in 15, like you did have the quarterback, and there were, like, I assume, right, like that whole year there was still a lot of hope, just basically like you got to get Whisenhunt out of here, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
I think a lot of the optimism or lack of optimism right now for Titans fans in this moment and moving forward is whether they believe in Vrabel or not. Because if you think you got the coach in place and you got the quarterback in place, okay, well, those are two of the most important things to have. And then you have to have a lot of work to do around that. But if you believe that, then I wouldn't think you'd be completely depressed right now.
How quickly can you restock the roster? That's the question to me. I think the quarterback has shown enough flashes. Though I think the X and O guys on Twitter who do a great job with film are overdoing it now. Look at this flash from Levis. Look at this flash from Levis. Look at this flash from Levis. Well, they won't listen to Levis tell you he just played his worst game, which he did. It was a bad game.
You think so?
It was a bad game. I mean, he made a lot of bad throws.
I think he played
47%.
better than the week before. Yeah.
Threw 47%. He missed Hopkins twice on the sideline of balls that weren't catchable. He missed a couple of screens to Tyjae Spears that were really not thrown with any kind of good touch.
Well, one of them
to make a play on.
He was like this, wasn't he?
On his back.
Yeah.
You should use it's a radio medium, but you need to.
Well, I'm on video. Look,
Yeah.
see, he was like this. See?
Thank
The
you.
audience much bigger listening than watching. He didn't have a good game. I don't know why we have to say like it wasn't a bad game. And Tim Kelly says, I don't think it was his worst game. And then you say, what was his worst game? I can't say. Well, God
great.
forbid I'd say.
I was sitting next to John Burton. We like to make fun of PK
Freaking
a lot.
ridiculous.
It's
You can't agree with
What
the
was
guy?
his worst game?
Well, he
It's like-
says it wasn't his worst game.
Well, did he
okay,
remain-
well, what was his worst game?
Did he remain
I'm in
on
a
the
complete
podium?
panic now. You've asked me a difficult question.
Will
At least he
Levis,
stayed on the podium.
I want the 10 worst passes you've ever thrown, Will. Now.
That was funny.
That was
We
less
made fun of him.
Bostonian. Is he
So,
making progress?
I don't want to bring Stilly up, but apparently he had a big thing with Vrabel walking away when somebody 2 days later, after you guys completely blew the Vrabel press conference, asked Vrabel if Amy was involved. What did Stilly have to say about that?
No,
Just that it leaves the door open for people to think it was Amy Adams' Strunk decision.
That was my take.
Yeah.
He just said he liked my take. So I don't know how I should feel about that. But yeah, when
You liked your take that was 2 days late when you were at the press conference and you didn't ask?
yes, we understand, but let's deal with the facts of the matter.
The facts of the matter are you blew
That's
Monday.
that's earlier. Then I admit it. You're right. So you ask a question, and then Vrabel doesn't answer. And I was like if you're Amy Adams Strunk and you actually just like that day got a call, hey Amy, it's Coach Vrabel. I'm going to move on from Craig. I go, well, I totally understand, Mike. Thanks. Have a great day. Hang up. My Amy Adams Strunk person. I'd be pissed if he reacted the way he did at the podium right there, because to me it kind of leaves the door a little more open that maybe she did just say, Mike, are you going to do something about Craig Ackerman today? Terrible Amy Adams Strunk
I
impersonation.
think the call probably went the other direction.
You think it was Amy calling him?
Well, it wasn't too long ago that he said there won't be any changes on the coaching staff during the season.
That's fine. So
what changed?
And even if that's the case, if I'm Amy Adams Strunk, I'm like, well, you made it look that way.
Yeah.
Do you know? But the point made to us by who made this point?
I don't know what you're going to say.
Yeah, who made this point that I haven't said?
Someone made a really good
Read
point
my
to us.
mind.
And the point was, you do irritate Vrabel. So maybe it was just that he was sick of you and didn't want to answer your question.
He's not going to tell us anything about that. He just needs to be made uncomfortable with the question so we see how
But
he
he
reacts,
gets
which we
uncomfortable
saw.
when you ask questions because he wants so badly to throw F-bombs all over you, and then
I
he's
don't
like,
care.
I just got to leave the podium.
Do we care?
No, but the point is that might be part of the reaction, not just the I don't want to answer
He's
about
done.
Amy. You see what I'm saying?
Well, all of it
You
would have been
understand
fine
this?
if you guys did your job on Monday. How many of you were in the room? 8?
Oh, there were more than that.
12?
Well, you should have showed up.
So I was vomiting.
Bring a bag. I don't care. People go on airplanes. They have a barf bag.
All right, so what we're getting on the record here in Nashville is that Joe Rexrode is admitting on behalf of the Nashville media that me not being there on a crucial day basically collapses the whole Titans press coverage.
Who does he sound like?
Stilly.
Yeah, but I'm accurate.
Okay.
Well, you just said it. You just said it. Be there vomiting, because without you there vomiting, the right question doesn't get asked.
I'm just imagining Voldemort. Jerry, I want Jerry,
Yes.
Potter.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line. Welcome in Billy. Billy, good afternoon.
Billy,
Thanks
somehow
for
this
calling
all
in.
ties into a children's movie.
How you guys doing today? Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks,
hey,
Billy.
I live in the middle of Colts country, and it sucks being a Titans fan, but with all the holes on this roster, if they could somehow figure out a way to shore up that offensive line during the offseason, and I'm not talking all pro caliber players, I'm talking just serviceable, that makes a big difference for the entire team across the board. If we can sustain some drives, not always going 3 and out, that helps the defense. And the turnaround might be faster than we think.
You know who you
Thanks for
sound
the call,
like?
Billy.
You know who you sound like, Billy? Jimmy, that called in on December 8th, 2022. Because everybody said the exact same thing last year.
Yep.
And what did they do? They replaced Dennis Daly with Andre Dillard. So what's our faith level? I don't have faith that if they don't wind up with one of the top 2 tackles, that they know how to figure out which one is the next best. If they're 3 next best guys, I'd bet odds that they picked the wrong one.
Well, then why should they stay in their jobs?
Well, the one guy's only been here for 11 months.
I was going to say, who does he sound like?
Well, look,
do you have faith in them picking the right guy?
I think that they definitely picked a bad left tackle last offseason. I think they had a pretty good draft. Am I wrong about that?
the draft is the part where I have the jury to me is still out on that, because everybody gets all freaked out about the draft and what they've done since 2020. And it's different people drafting now. So I can only go off this last year with what they did in the draft, and the early returns are it could be pretty good.
But the early returns are early.
Exactly.
First round pick who's a can't miss guy. All right. So I mean, if you blew Skoronski, heads should have been taken
Sure.
off. Second round pick is help me. Levis.
The quarterback?
Right? So you trade it. You trade
kind of
it up
important.
though. You trade it up for the quarterback. You give up a third round pick. After that, you got a running back who's pretty good.
Pretty good.
But you don't determine. He had a good game this week, but people were raving about him there for 3 weeks where he didn't do a damn thing. And I need a little bit more from that. Now, we're going to blame it on the offensive line to a degree and everything. People want to online rave about Wiley, who's, to me, very middling at best. People want to go crazy about Duncan because Duncan isn't Dillard and Duncan isn't
But if you get a swing tackle there where you picked him,
Sixth round?
that's a good pick. That's a very good pick.
If you get a swing tackle. But this last game, he wasn't anything special.
No.
PFF
Swing
had him
tackle doesn't
giving up
start.
6 pressures.
Right.
Yeah, swing tackle here starts regularly. Swing tackle here is often number 1 tackle. All right? And Colton Dowell is, a project. So we're judging 3.5 guys. It's a small pool.
Right, but it's also not a disaster, right?
Congratulations on having a
Well, you're saying you don't have faith in them to do it. I mean, if that's the case, then people should be depressed.
So
They're about
far,
to suck
they
for a lot of years.
successfully picked 1 offensive lineman. Free agency, they continued their disaster. So I don't have a lot of faith on their ability to identify and select and coach up offensive linemen. Period.
We'll get back into this discussion a little bit later in the show. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Coming up next, it's time for Pigskin Pick'em. We'll get to some games coming up this weekend, get PK's thoughts on them as well in a heated competition right now. And Pigskin Pick'em. That's next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Now, it's time for Pigskin Pick'em with Robby and Rexrode on ESPN 102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
It is that time of the week, time for Pigskin Pick'em here on Robby and Rexrode. Not a lot of college football to get into this weekend. We do have the Army-Navy game, though, which #America. We're all excited
Which
for.
we will pick.
We will pick. Got a lot of actually, when you think about it, like the primetime games, outside of one, not very good this weekend in the NFL, but there are actually some pretty darn good games across the league this week. So looking forward to that. Let's do a quick standings update in the competition.
Oh, goody.
I went 3-3 last week, no lock. Nick Keyser 2-4 last week, no lock. Joe Rexrode 1-5, no lock.
I suck.
Struggling last week for Rexrode, which brings the overall standings. Nick Keyser 48-36, 5-9 on his locks, good for 53 points. Myself, Robby Stanley, 43-41, 7-7 on my locks, 50 points. Joe Rexrode, who was in first place at one point by about 10 points, now 44-40, 5-9 on your locks, 49 points. Last place for Joe Rexrode.
Wow.
Your thoughts?
That's where I'm used to being. It was a great run in first, I must say. I just don't want to be
even the
last.
losers get lucky sometimes, Joe. Put
Well,
your hope on
fading
that.
as the
Hey,
season goes
the boomers
on.
like your Tom Petty references.
Oh, yes. We begin with the Army-Navy game. Nick Keyser has texted in his picks today. The leader in the competition, who at one point this year in the competition, Joe, picked a game that wasn't happening for another 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So
It was in dead last, and we made fun of him a lot, and now he's winning.
now he's winning. So that's how things are going right now. Army favored
Sorry,
by
Nick.
2.5 in this one. Nick is going with Army in the competition. I'm going Navy. I got a friend of mine who plays quarterback around here that's considering committing to Navy. So for no other reason than that, I'm going Navy plus 2.5 against Army. Joe Rexrode, Army-Navy game. Army favored by 2.5.
Always Army. Army family. Always Army. Got to go Army.
PK, how much Army-Navy have you watched this year?
Oh, exactly 0, and that'll be the same after this weekend. But the first time I ran into Fleet Week when I was at Columbia in New York City, I didn't know it was Fleet Week, and saw a bunch of soldier-looking folks and was in the bathroom with those guys, and I pounded on the paper towel dispenser,
Yep.
and I said, "Beat Navy!" And my friend said, "These guys are Navy." I said, "Beat Army!" And ever since then, I've been a Navy guy. I like Fleet Week. We partied with those guys every year.
Nice. This was before
PK,
phones,
big
right?
Navy guy.
Oh, well
Yeah.
before.
Okay, good.
Well before email.
Yeah. Before, like, I'm trying to think, like, before, like the drinking age was still 18, or this was, like, during Prohibition, or what? Yeah.
The drinking age was 21. But we played baseball on a computer that the pitch was like a dot.
Yeah. I got you.
Eagles-Cowboys coming up this weekend. Cowboys favored by 3.5 at home. I will start on this one. I'm going Cowboys. Dak Prescott playing at a high level. Can make a case he's the league MVP right now. Jalen Hurts a little bit banged up. They got destroyed last week, which honestly, if I'm the Cowboys, I don't feel great about heading into this matchup. And it's a big game, and I'm picking the Cowboys, which scares the crap out of me. But I'll go Cowboys minus the 3.5, Joe Rexrode. Eagles-Cowboys, who you got?
Yeah, I'm going to go Eagles. First of all, just on the Dak stuff, he has very good numbers. He's played well. And really, he played well in that first game. I mean, he stepped out of bounds, and that was a mistake, but he did play well. I just have a hard time buying him. And I love the half point there. But I think the Eagles are going to outright respond to last week and win a close game.
Cowboys will make a mistake. Dak will make a mistake like they always do. They're a fraud. Eagles.
I already regret picking the Cowboys.
Too late.
I've already done it. Nick Keyser going with the Eagles plus the 3.5 as well. Titans-Dolphins, Monday Night Football down there in South Florida. The Miami Dolphins are a 13.5-point favorite on the FanDuel Sportsbook. 13.5. Joe Rexrode, who we got on Monday night?
Dolphins lock. Super
boy.
easy.
Locking down on the Miami Dolphins.
Hey, wait. Hey, Ian, can you hit the guarantee number? It just makes me feel better. Ian,
I think you just totally put
Sorry,
me on
one
the spot.
second. Let me get that for
you
you.
hurt me, Ian. You hurt me. Nick,
Don't
where
do it.
are you,
Don't
Nick?
listen to Joe.
Oh, goodness. These poor guys
I can't.
putting a lot of pressure
This is
on
like
you
one
to
of
do
those
your
things.
job.
Like I can't even continue until I get a guarantee. All right, go ahead.
It could be next show.
You have no analysis for the Dolphins locking down on?
Oh well, I mean, they're going to win by a lot. They're going to win by a lot more than 13.5 points. Yes,
Nailed
thank
it.
you, Nick. Oh my God, I just called you Nick. Good morning. Good
Speaking
morning,
of Nick,
everybody.
He picked the Dolphins as well. Yeah, I'm going to go Dolphins minus 13.5 as well. I think
Pete.
they're going to win this game by about 30.
Do you have an argument against this, PK?
At least 20. Fulton's not playing. Look for Eric Garrar and Trey Avery to struggle.
Not going to go well trying to defend those guys.
Well, yeah, no
in the passing
Simmons.
game.
Look,
No-
this is one of those games like we always say, like, everybody thinks it's going to be a blowout that direction, so something will happen that it's not. I don't think it's going to – I don't think we're going to come back saying that.
I think if they can have like an 18-minute drive, 99-yard touchdown drive in which they convert a bunch of 4th and 1s and it's all Derrick Henry, then maybe they will cover.
That'll trim the lead by a touchdown.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's quickly roll through individual picks. I'll start, Joe. Give me your Detroit Lions -3 against the Chicago Bears. Feeling pretty good about it. Bears suck. Lions looked good last week. Lions -3 against the Bears. Your first individual selection.
I'm just telling you. Did you see the first meeting between these teams? The Lions were so lucky to beat that team.
Yep, and that makes me feel even better.
I'm glad you picked it. So Bears +3. All right.
Is that what you're doing?
No, I'm not. I don't want to mess with them because I make fun of them, and then it messes up my. I need good picks. I just leave the Lions alone. You want my pick now? My first pick?
I do.
Bills at Chiefs.
How many times did you have to ask?
Chiefs -1. Both of these teams trying to bounce back. But I think the Chiefs are going to win a pretty good game, and I love just a point. So I got to go Chiefs there.
Chiefs -1. Nick Keys are going with the Lions against the Bears as well. So Lions -3 against the Bears.
God, absolutely go Bears. Bear down.
Joe Rexrode,
Bear down.
Second individual selection.
Rams at Ravens. Ravens -7.5. I love the Ravens. I think the Ravens could potentially make the Super Bowl this year. But, I really like how the Rams are playing. The Rams are sneaky good. They're sneaky resurgent, given how bad things looked not long ago. And I like the half point there. So give me the Rams and 7.5 points on the road.
There you go. I'm going to Packers-Giants. Over under 37. Give me the under and make it my lock. The ugly game. Guaranteed. Lock it down on the under 37 for Packers and Giants coming up on Monday Night Football alongside the Titans and the Dolphins.
Look at you with the over-under lock.
I got one.
All right.
Seattle +11 at San Francisco.
I like it.
They'll cover that.
You think they'll cover that?
Because Seattle, San Francisco coming off the big
emotional win.
It'll soften up a little bit.
I like the thinking there.
I actually looked at that.
I wouldn't touch that one. That one scares me, but I like the thinking.
Nick Keys are going with the Houston Texans -3.5 against the New York Jets, and he is locking down on the Houston Texans. A lot of faith in C.J. Stroud. We'll see if Zach Wilson can matriculate the ball down the field.
Yeah.
Oh, they convinced him to play.
Yeah,
that was
exactly.
big.
Come on, Zach. I don't want to play. Come on, Zach. Come on, buddy.
My final pick, give me the Denver Broncos +2.5 against the Chargers. Chargers coming off just a beautiful 6-0 win last week against New England. They fall to a changed Denver team. Denver +2.5 against the Chargers. Joe, your final individual selection.
So Colts at Bengals. Bengals -2.5. I tell you what, I was so impressed with Jake Browning in that game against Jacksonville. Like, I just don't. By the end of the game, I'm like, I don't think that was fraudulence. I don't think that was smoke and mirrors. There's another example of a team with an actual competent backup quarterback. And all due respect to Indy Ben, who just blowing us up in the text line with how we are selling his amazing Colts short. I don't think they're that good. I respect Gardner Minshew, and they've done a good job, but I think the Bengals are going to take care of business there. Give me the Bengals.
Well, Cincinnati -2.5
Yes.
against Indianapolis, -2.5 against the Colts. Nick Keeser's final selection, Packers -6.5 against the Giants on Monday Night Football. We'll see. Doesn't look like Christian Watson's going to play, but looks like Aaron Jones might.
6.5?
6.5.
So he had the courage to pick the Packers when you didn't. Good job, Nick.
I'm on a nice roll of not doing that. So I'm going to keep not
Don't
doing
bet
that.
with your heart, Robbie.
That's right. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Coming up next, we'll get into a little college football. Paul Koharski with some thoughts on the college football playoff, plus some portal news for the Vols today that has not been very good. We'll get into that coming up next as well. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Ian Safar, Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com with us for the entire program today. Commandeering Stillman and Company. We'll be back in the morning slot on Monday, coming up from 6 to 9 a.m. Stilly
Tough
back
turn
in here
for you
today.
guys.
Let's Chase and Big Joe or have a hostile takeover in mind here. Are we sure they don't?
Let's have a bunch of hostile takeovers.
Just
one after the other.
Let Jared back in?
Yeah. They don't let you back in. You don't let him back in. And Nashville wins.
Yeah. Okay. Ian, you get to come back, buddy.
Hey, man.
Oh, thank you so much.
I will say I slept till 8:45 today. It was nice.
Ian is asked
that's
occasionally
crazy.
by Jared for commentary on my work, and Ian and I are going to have a meeting during the next break about that.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
What did I miss?
Jared will be
find
like,
out the meeting.
yeah, the way I read this is Kuharski's totally wrong. What do you think, Ian?
Trying to interpret Jared's mind can be very dangerous.
Can
So,
be. There's
Yeah.
no question about it.
Dun, 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 dun. All right, go ahead.
I thought you were going to go Pink Panther stuff. We'll see.
Yeah.
Joe, some interesting developments on the transfer portal today for the Tennessee Volunteers. Tyler Barron reportedly hitting the transfer portal along with Danico Slaughter. So two pretty important members of the defensive side of the ball. Number one, I thought Barron might be going to the NFL. So
Me too.
the fact that he's staying in college football and is going apparently somewhere else other than Tennessee is interesting. And then there's the Slaughter part of this. And look, Tennessee's secondary is not very good. I think he's probably the best member of that secondary, and now he is gone. So not great news.
He's in the portal.
Well, he's in the portal. You're right. But
Is
he's
there
probably gone.
any limitation on somebody flirting with you to lure you into the portal?
What do you mean? Are you talking about like tampering from coaches?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean,
It's the Wild
it's
West.
not. Yeah. I mean, it happens.
It happens.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no like. Here's the formal interview process.
Right.
Like no, it's just all back.
Well, my
channel.
guy calls your
It's
guy.
all back
Yes,
channels.
if you're in the portal, we're going to come get you.
Right.
So yeah, and so this is a really first of all, I agree with you, Robbie. I thought Tyler Barron might go to the NFL, but Tyler Barron is probably he had a very good season.
He's a mid-round pick.
He's a mid-round pick, and this is where it really gets interesting. And in some ways, it's good for college sports. For example, Caitlin Clark might come back next year because she's making a boatload to play at Iowa, and they fill that place every night.
Yeah.
She's probably
And
making I don't know what
Absolutely.
a WNBA salary is, but she's making more.
He's probably
right?
making more.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because, and you're seeing this sometimes, like Hunter Dickinson at Kansas in college. But there's a guy who he'd be in an NBA bench or G League, but instead he's making $2 million or whatever to play at Kansas this year. So I think Tyler Barron, what you see is like guys like that who they're very talented, but they're not locks to go high. So get in the portal and get a bidding war going and make yourself more money. And I don't know, I'm sure he had some money last year from the Spire Sports Collective.
Yeah.
But I think that's what this is. And the same thing with Danico Slaughter. I don't think Danico Slaughter is an NFL corner. You know, a lot of guys like that can kind of have a cup of coffee in the league. He's a good player. I agree. He's their best corner for sure.
Which is
But
probably not great for them. But
it's
yeah.
not. So it's like a Vols fan might be like, well, just get better corners. But, like, if you have a veteran who at least can play some, it's good to keep them. And then you hope you have some of these young guys come along. I wouldn't be surprised if either one of them ended up back at Tennessee, even though they're in the portal today, but they'll end up back at Tennessee with more money in their bank account. That's what it is. I mean, every quarterback in college football now, I swear, is just being told, go in the portal. Just go in the portal,
Yeah.
and then you may come back to where you are, but
Leverage.
yeah, absolutely.
Sounds like a real fun time to be a college football coach.
I would think so.
Yeah.
But Vrabel, you got to get ready for this when Ohio State comes and poaches you in a few weeks.
So, PK, you've outlined your entire issue with college football to this point. You've got a nice little piece of paper, nice notepad over here.
Well, Joe wanted
I'm
to
interested
start
hear
with
it.
if I thought that the committee got it right. And I do. I mean, I think Alabama has to be in. The SEC champion has to be in. I wish Georgia had won, and it would have simplified things. But, again, the SEC team disappointing me is, generally what I'm used to.
Good for
But
you. I hope Glennon is listening. We
let
had
me-
a heated debate.
Yeah,
at
it
the
was
Titans
fun.
game Sunday.
It helped make the hour before the game, 40 minutes before the game, the unbearable period waiting for kickoff. But I just want to outline, since we have never done this before, my overall beef with college football.
Okay.
And then you can reflect on it. First, I prefer big things to small things. So the idea that the biggest thing in the world is happening in Athens, Georgia, or Knoxville, Tennessee, or Oxford, Mississippi is ridiculous. I also prefer competitive games to tradition and pageantry. So in a place where people think pretty hedges or marching band is a big part of what's going on, I find laughable. I love competition. So I was going to do this, and I'll do it next year. Every Saturday I was compelled to tweet out, it sure is important that Georgia played Ball State. It sure is important that NC State played VMI. It sure is important that Duke played UConn, that Rutgers played Wagner, that Penn State played UMass, that LSU played Army, that UNC played Campbell, that Bama played Chattanooga. It's a fundamentally broken thing when the financial structure is that these teams have to go take a beating somewhere in order to financially be afloat. But that never gets talked about as a big thing that's broken. Everybody just accepts it. And they go to a tailgate for these games and think it's great to watch their team win 48-0 when it's actually the most boring thing possible. I'd rather do anything than watch a 48-0 football game. There's nothing enjoyable. You could be the biggest fan of a team in the world. If I'm watching the Yankees, my love, and they're winning 15-0, I've turned it off at 4-0. It's boring.
4-0.
And the rooting for the
learning some interesting things about PK here.
And the rooting for the conference is the dumbest thing ever. Here's where you can root for a conference. If you're a one-bid conference, if you're an Ivy League fan in the tournament like I am, if Penn or Princeton goes, it's great for Penn or Princeton to advance far in the tournament because it shows the world that Ivy League basketball is something, and maybe Columbia gets some attention out of that.
Go Lions.
If you're a 6-bid conference, sitting after the game and chanting SEC instead of your school's name is stupid. Rooting for Bama as a representative of the SEC hurts your school. If you're Missouri, Bama doing well only helps Bama continue to do well. And it hurts Missouri, and you're a moron. And people don't understand this. The same way they don't understand that they lost the Civil War.
All right, I will interject a little bit on the last point. Some of that is there's very much a Big Ten SEC thing. I guess you could take that.
Well, that's about to get worse, by the way.
But I don't hear the Big Ten chanting Big Ten.
Yeah,
you know why?
There is, though.
Because the Big Ten's smarter.
No, there is that element there too, where it's like just anyone but the SEC team winner. Oh, like on bowl New Year's days, absolutely.
There's definitely anti-SEC.
Yeah, the Big Ten people are. Oh, come on, Iowa, please beat Ole Miss. I mean, there is that. But the problem is there's no just like there's no chant. BIG. You know what I mean? Like SEC works as a chant. SEC. You know what I mean?
There's more to it than that.
It's really sad.
It's this regionalism where you're worried about the world's view of your area and you're protecting it for dear life.
That's true with some. I mean, it's true with some people.
Because you're embarrassed.
I think you're broad brushing a little bit, which I know is shocking. It's very sad that you don't honor. I mean, that's some of what makes college football great. Robbie, I want you to respond to this. I mean, come on, the tradition.
Well, you got to
I'm all about
SEC
tradition.
because you got to be for Texas A&M, which is nowhere near the Southeast, and Missouri, which is nowhere near the Southeast. It makes complete sense.
Well, that's some of the ridiculousness that absolutely needs to be called out.
Well, there's about to be USC in the Big Ten.
Yeah,
it's gonna be fun. USC versus Rutgers.
Yeah.
Oh, it's nice little intercoastal rivalry there.
It's incredibly stupid.
Laguna Beach.
I'm all about the pageantry tradition, though. I disagree with everything you said about that. I will say I've been to some tailgates. I went to a Tennessee-Wyoming tailgate one time. Really thought Tennessee was going to win. That did not happen. Wyoming stormed out of there. The Cowboys in Neyland Stadium. That was about all she wrote.
What is the importance of a fat tuba player to football?
It's the pride of the Southland band, man. It's beautiful.
It's people
dotting the I. It's
cool. It's about the experience
stuff.
It's
it is.
Kids both playing an instrument and walking at the same time. I just don't get it. Like, if you want to play an instrument, join the orchestra. And then there's some real music going on. But to play an instrument and walk at the same time, I never have understood the marriage of the two. And the phones are going to light up now because everybody down here loves them.
So you've never sat.
I've watched great marching bands. Nolanville High School's marching band.
Thank you for calling them out. Yes.
Was great.
Okay,
it's great.
All right,
now I've seen that.
Okay, but the point being,
That's
it's not
never
easy to
need to
do
see it
that.
again.
It's not easy to do that. The
Congrats
stuff that
to
these
those
marching
kids.
bands do.
But how many times do you want to do? Like, I would love to prepare and do that once. There's my performance. But I'm going to do that over and over. I'm going to spend my life.
Hey, they
doing
changed
that.
it up.
When the tee opens up,
Oh, it's
I think
beautiful.
it's pretty
Gets me
sweet,
going.
man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The synchronicity involved in that, the work that goes into making
Synchronized
that possible.
swimming is really synchronized. How much do you love that?
It's pretty cool to watch.
I have covered synchronized diving, and I thought it was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen.
You were paid to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you had to pay to watch it, would you? Don't hesitate.
No, probably not.
PK prefers the Johnny Cash song coming on
when
in the
I-
fourth quarter of the Titans game.
Yeah, exactly.
I hear the train coming.
They've gotten rid of that,
PK's just
haven't
bobbing his head in the press box.
They've gotten rid of that, haven't they?
I think so.
I don't care anything about what goes on between the snaps. The shell game, all of that. I'm there for the game.
Right, but I will
Why
say,
can't it be about the game?
when
Give me a good game.
If I pay for a ticket, a college football game, absolutely part of what I like about the experience. And, mostly college football games for me in the last decades have been in the press box, but it is that stuff. That stuff is absolutely an enhancement of the experience.
615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll take your thoughts on Paul Kuharsky's assessment of college football.
Especially if it's 48-0.
Apparently, PK wants to yell at Rexrode about Vanderbilt, too. We'll get into that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Make your silly underdog picks today for your chance to win weekly prizes. You can play at thegamenashville.com or the 102.5 The Game app. Silly underdog picks presented by Volunteer Hose and Gasket. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, live from our 102.5 The Game studio. Brought to you by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. PK's got people fired up about college football, marching bands, and the like.
Kevin from Union City, bless you for this text. I guess PK forgot, but high school marching bands are actually very competitive. They have competitions like football players do. And to us band nerds who also enjoy the game, we enjoy the halftime show just as much.
Have some.
Oh, yes, I completely forgot that there are weird competitions amongst marching bands. I take back everything I said.
Here's another text that says, PK.
Johnny, keep your elbows up a little bit while you're taking that 45-degree turn. Elbows up.
Form matters.
Now you're flat on that B.
Again, you are obsessed with like dudes who throw a little baseball around that started randomly like the 1860s. I mean, I don't know.
But there's athleticism to it.
There's some athleticism to some band performances. You don't think so? You don't think there's some
Look, I'm going to be stereotypical. I'm going to be stereotypical. Most of the tuba players do not look like athletes.
I'm sure there are some ripped tuba players.
I'm sure there are. But there are some who are definitely not.
This text says
the ones that are shown on TV definitely generally are not. They stereotype. Those TV producers, this is on them, Joe.
The camera
because
people.
They tend to show, the camera people, they tend to feature the ones who fit the stereotype of a tuba player.
Interesting. This text says, PK, criticizing the SEC, marching bands, and the South in one
Clean
segment.
sweep, baby.
What else have you got?
And I want to say,
democracy, women?
No, I love democracy,
okay.
and I love women.
Right.
I want to say, to the 51% of Nashville that has moved here from somewhere else, you're welcome.
Make this a north-south
Welcome to our city.
battle.
Mason-Dixon.
Let's go to our world.
My uncle once owned a piece of the Mason-Dixon line. We went out to his backyard to find it. Yeah.
Well,
to find his property line.
You are a fascinating person.
Thank you.
Every day.
Apparently Rexrode has relatives in Shelbyville. There you go.
I've been to the graveyard.
I'll take my dead uncle over your dead uncle.
We've already talked about our deceased fathers today. Yeah. Good
Condolences.
stuff.
I didn't realize you had a dead father.
102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ian is trying to figure out what all is going on around here.
Ian's like, boy, Jared is actually a lot easier with his yammering for 4 straight hours.
Welcome in, James.
He hasn't been
James, good afternoon. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, Paul, it's good to hear your voice, man. I just want to say this. First of all, I want to agree with Paul on one thing he said, and then I'm going to just take issue on the other. The first thing, he is spot on, and I hate to talk about you, Paul, in the third person, but I'm going to.
Go ahead.
He is spot on when he says it is asinine, ignorant. If you're a Tennessee fan and you're sitting there pulling for "Go Alabama" in the bowl game, are you kidding me? Listen, as a Tennessee fan, I don't want Alabama, Florida, or Georgia to ever win. But I got a perfectly logical, psychological explanation for it, Paul. It's called tribalism. And the South, people in the South have a tribalism complex, and it does go back to the Civil War. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's true. It's like living in a small town. And if you live in a small town like I do in Ashland City, even though I'm son of immigrants, you know, everybody knows everybody. It's a tribalistic thing, and it doesn't make any sense. It's stupid. I think I heard you, Paul, one time say, if I'm a Yankees fan, do you think like hell I'm going to pull for the Red Sox in the World Series? Hell no. It doesn't make any sense. Now, what I will take issue with Paul on, it's just
hold on. Let's go one at a time. Let's go one at a time. That was very
UT game. He'd never been to a college football game before, and he got the pageantry. Paul, you grew up in New Jersey. You're not grow up with Southern football. It's hard for you to understand. I get it, but hey, man, you're right about the stupidity on cheering for SEC. It's the stupidest thing in the world. Thank you for your platform, guys.
Thanks, James.
I enjoyed a UT game when I went, but it wasn't because of the marching band.
How many Tennessee fans do you think actually root for Alabama? I don't think the number's very high.
I don't either.
I don't think there's a high number of like, oh, SEC, go get Alabama, go win another national title.
I think they do it in a closeted way.
No,
absolutely.
I really don't think there are many. And I think basically, like you said, Missouri, Alabama doesn't help you. There is a little bit of, this is the best league, so that's a selling point for everybody, right? Like, I mean, that's what Vanderbilt says. It's just how it could benefit you is the only reason people root for it, and then a little bit of the back and forth of the Big Ten.
Benefit you.
Well,
the way people think it benefits you.
It's not a huge benefit
because you lose in recruiting as a result of it.
I agree.
Sure.
He made an excellent point about the tribalism thing. The solution to tribalism, which I view as a problem more than he does, is to travel. Go other places and see that Tuscaloosa, Alabama is not the center of the world.
Go to New Jersey.
Go to New York City.
Exactly.
Go to New York City and see
Now here's what it's all about.
Go to
Newark
London,
Airport,
England, and
baby.
see that it's the center of the world. Go to Los Angeles and see. Go to places.
As Ryan from Chicago and Zach, among others, have pointed out, yes, good thing there's no rotund baseball players. All great athletes there in that
Ruth.
sport.
Well,
Peak
if you think that
athleticism.
tuba player's
they're-
going to get a major league contract.
And by the way, baseball players are soft per Robbie Stanley. Let's offend everybody today.
Well, I mean, baseball players are the ones getting hurt playing Guitar Hero, not football players.
That is true. Ah, poor
There's that.
Joel's of mine.
we're
That
not
broke my
afraid to
heart.
offend.
Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line. Welcome in Scott in Franklin. Scott, good
Scotty.
morning. Thanks for calling in.
Well,
I did it again.
I'm going to
Good morning.
agree and disagree on the tribalism thing. Last I checked, Virginia and North Carolina were part of the Confederacy, and there's the biggest rivalry is between ACC and SEC. And yes, the ACC schools
That's not the
chant
biggest.
ACC when they play SEC schools.
SEC doesn't
they're-
care about the ACC
Yeah.
at all.
Florida State is sitting home right now out of the playoffs because the ACC is a garbage conference this year. Not because their quarterback got hurt. Alabama is in because the SEC has won 15 of the last 20 championships.
So hold on. I'm going to stop.
That's a
I'm going to
huge
stop here.
difference.
I'm going to stop you right there. So let's say Florida State did everything they did, the same results, all that, but Jordan Travis was a quarterback. You don't think they'd be in the playoff?
If they had played anyone with a pulse, they would be in over Alabama, is what I'm saying.
Well, they
And
blew out
didn't.
LSU. All right, they'd be in the
LSU.
playoff. They'd be in the playoff. I
Yeah,
promise
George
you,
Travis
they'd
is
be in the
quarterback.
playoff.
They would be in.
They'd be in the
Well,
playoff.
I want to address the single stupidest thing I've ever heard on sports radio when Paul brought in the NCAA tournament. All that matters in NCAA selection and how many, you said if you're a six big league, you're not going to be a six big league if you don't have good out of conference wins. That's all that matters is how good your conference opponents do in beating other schools. I wanted Tennessee to beat Kansas really bad. It's the difference in getting 5 bids versus 8 or 9 bids in a big league.
Yeah, I think that's
You
true.
have to-
Well, he
you
wasn't
have
talking
to
hoops,
be
though.
part of a good conference.
I used
That is the
I
dumbest
used
thing I've ever heard in my entire life
Relax,
on radio.
relax
you
for a
have
second,
no
Chief.
idea how the NCAA tournament works.
relax
now.
for a second,
How
Chief.
fun
It's a
one works.
football. Can we mute him so that
Thank you,
somebody
Scott.
intelligent can talk?
Thanks for the call. I like the
It
call.
was a
I support the
football.
call.
Is a football conversation. I used the NCAA tournament as an example of a one bid situation to show how you might root
Yeah.
for a conference using the Ivy League as an example.
I took.
I don't know, nor do I care about the intricacies of the 7th bid of the ACC, nor do most Americans in March Madness.
Well, he is right, though. I took that segment of your lunatic ravings as mostly talking about football. But yeah, in basketball, there's no doubt you should. If you're, you should absolutely SEC. If you're a Tennessee fan, you should root for Alabama to beat Gonzaga, or for sure. That does help you in basketball for sure, no doubt.
Right. But also, if you're not a lunatic like you, which is one of the very small percentage of the world that still thinks of college basketball as a seasonal sport
Amen.
rather than a March Madness sport, follow things to that degree.
I can't.
Preach.
You know what? Tomorrow is going to be a fantastic day of college hoops all day long.
I hope you
Can't
enjoy
wait
it.
for it. I will.
I
will
mean, is
enjoy
there a
it.
sport
I feel
with
sad for you
more
guys that you
roster-
won't.
Is there a sport with more roster turnover? This is a quiz question for you than college basketball. How many guys on Michigan State right now will be on Michigan State next year?
Well, it's funny. You
Three?
shouldn't have brought them up because their entire team from last year is back. But there is a lot. But it's like I just talked about. It's actually you're seeing a lot of guys who are kind of fringe NBA players. Michigan State's a great example, saying you know what, I got NIL money now. I'm going to stay around. It's almost like going back.
So
to,
maybe it's on the comeback. But at its
Little bit.
worst, what was it?
Yeah, well, the one and done especially.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to go 1 year, and then even if they weren't good enough for the NBA.
I mean, more than any sport, it became a root for the uniform thing. And I have a lot of trouble rooting for the uniform.
Speaking of college
Except for the
basketball,
Yankees uniform.
tune in to
The
93.3.
Yankees have some guys on the team who were there last year. They can't get out from under him, Joe. I have to root for Giancarlo Stanton because they can't get out from under him. It's the opposite of what you're saying, actually.
Tune in to 93.3 Classic Hits tomorrow for MTSU men's basketball. Blue Raiders will take on Belmont at the Murphy Center with pregame beginning at 7 o'clock. Tip-off at 7:30. Coverage also available on the 93.3 Classic app and at 93.3ClassicHits.com. Coming up next, we'll continue the conversation on college football. We'll also get into some very interesting comments from Tyson Barrie, who I guess could be traded at any time here from the Nashville Predators. That's all coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com. Ian Safar with us here on this Friday afternoon. Taking your thoughts, 615-737-1025. Joe, some more news on the Tennessee front. We've talked about the portal with the Nico Slaughter and Tyler Barron entering the portal, but more tough news on the Vols front.
Yeah, this is just on the traditional recruiting front. their tight end commit, Jonathan Eccles, 4-star, has been committed since July of 22. Lead recruiter was Alex Golish. Alex Golish was the Vols OC, the Vols tight end coach. He, of course, is the head coach now at South Florida, and he just flipped him to South Florida. So Ryan Shumpert, who does a great job for Rocky Top Insider, has this tweet. Since Alec Abeln took over for Golish as tight ends coach, the Vols have failed to land targets Jaden Riddell, Amir Jackson, Max LeBlanc, and Roger Salapiaja, and I could not break down their games for you. But if they're targets of the Vols, I promise you they are high-level players. They are only targeting high. They are trying to they're trying to get that roster to the 4- and 5-star level that typically tells you can compete for a national championship. So now they lose their lone tight end commit to USF. It's been a pretty bad day for the Vols on the player movement front.
Yep, going to be
Go
interesting.
Vols, go UT.
How they handle that part of it.
Getting it done at tight
As we
end.
move forward here. Not much for the tight ends this year. We'll see if they can get a little more.
They do
more
have
production.
a young tight end they're very excited about.
They are very excited about. So
keep
we'll
that
see
in
how that goes. Joe, some interesting comments from Tyson Barrie yesterday. I was at morning skate. Preds, by the way, big win last night against Tampa Bay. They won 5-1 against the Lightning. They've won 3 in a row, 9-2 in their last 11. So they're playing some good hockey right now. But we've discussed the Tyson Barrie incident. He's been a healthy scratch now 3 of the last 4 games, and word gets out that he wants to be kind of looking around, shopping around for another team. Barrie Trotz with some pointed quotes on our station the other day discussing the Tyson Barrie situation. And Barrie addressed the media yesterday for the first time and was asked by John Glennon about the fit with the Predators and what his kind of viewpoint on that is he was expected yesterday and ended up happening to be a healthy scratch for the 3rd time in 4 games. Here's what Tyson Barrie had to say yesterday morning at Morning Skate.
Your desire to maybe kind of move on, you just think the fit is not a great one? Is that fair to say? Or?
Well, I mean, yeah, if we're getting into it, I think, anytime, I'm in the stands, so it doesn't really feel like a great fit. So,
yeah.
My goal is to be playing hockey, and whether that's here or elsewhere is up for the powers that be inside. But, I'm pride myself on being a good teammate and a good person first and foremost, so trying to, stick to that.
So that was Barrie yesterday at Morning Skate. He seemed, it was myself and Glennon kind of approaching him, and he seemed like genuinely surprised when Glennon asked that question and brought it up, like surprised that we were going to start talking about what all is going down with him this week, which I was just like, what do you think we're getting ready to talk to you about, man?
So
like,
Tyson, what you got any good Nashville restaurants lately, or what's going on?
What's it like up in the box?
Yeah, so how's that like up there? So there's that part of this, and then we get, I would say, I don't know, 3.5 minutes into the conversation, and I was asking Tyson Barrie about how he felt he's played this year. He talked about meeting with Andrew Burnett and how they may have disagreed a little bit on some X's and O's part of it, but this conversation was respectful and all those things. I said, so how do you feel like you've played this year? And here's what Tyson Barrie had to say to that.
What were the conversations like with you and Bruno when he approached you that you're going to be a healthy scratch?
Yeah, I think it was, it was obviously disappointing for me and tough, and but they were respectful, and I think we both have respect for each other as people and human beings, so it was never contentious, and obviously, maybe didn't see eye to eye on some of the X's and O's, but that's was nothing crazy.
How do you feel you have been playing this year when you've been in?
Yeah, I feel like I've had some good moments, and then pretty mediocre. So I understand where they're coming from, but it's a tough one for me. Obviously, first time in a long time since this has happened. So not really. I don't know. I'm trying not to really air it out in the media. So just gonna keep it.
So try not to really air it out in the media. So let's go over what's happened the last week. Barrie Trotz gets on here the other day and talks about how at one point there are 4 people on the earth that know that Tyson Barrie is upset and wants to move on. I would assume those 4 people are Andrew Burnett, Barrie Trotz, Tyson Barrie, and Tyson Barrie's agent. And then all of a sudden the information gets out that he wants out. You spent 3 minutes talking about it on the record, and then you come with a comment of, I don't know, like I'm trying not to air this thing out in the media. It was an interesting gathering with the media with Tyson Barrie yesterday. I'll put it that way.
Is it just playing devil's advocate? Because, yes, it's absolutely ridiculous because obviously Barrie Trotz is pissed enough to, go on Jared's show and
Talk about how unhappy
talk
he
about
is that
how
he got out.
pissed off he is.
Yeah.
So is it possible that like Barry's agent did this against his wishes or without, letting him know?
Well,
I mean, other than that, it seems like strategy to me, and like you absolutely do want to air it out in the
If
media.
he did it against his wishes, it's ridiculous. I mean, guys are agents' bosses. Anytime it goes the other way, it's either terrible agenting or players being pushed around by people who work for them.
Who get 3%, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if he did it against his wishes, then if I'm Tyson Barrie, I'm probably looking for a new agent.
Yeah.
I mean, his contract comes up at the end of this year, and make no mistake about it, he wants to play hockey, and I don't fault him for that. But that's what this is about. It's about the contract, right? Right now, he's not playing, and he's scheduled to get a new contract at the end of the year. And it's not going to be here. It was never going to be here. We've talked about that. I mean, he does not fit into the future plans of the Predators, which is fine. I mean, he's 32, and they're trying to kind of reshuffle the deck on their blue line anyway.
What's he worth?
I mean, he's probably worth, if they traded him right now, you could probably get 4th rounder, maybe 5th rounder. But the thing is, you could get that if not everybody in the league knew he didn't want out. Yeah. And now everybody knows he wants
you
out.
Probably
so
dropped
you have no leverage.
You probably dropped a round or two off this stuff, which is why Trotz is mad.
And do they need him as depth if they were to get hurt? Or how far down the pecking
order? Not really. I mean, Alex Carrier is about to come back from injury. He was on the ice yesterday. I mean, there's 7 right now, I think, if everybody's healthy, is Yossi, McDonough, Lazan, Carrier. I mean, they just sent Stasny back down to Milwaukee today. Luke Shen's in there. And then I think Barry's still 7 at that point. So it's going to be really interesting
and
to see how that
Stasny's fine as a 7 the way they've been playing.
And Stasny's going to come back up at some point. Yeah. I mean, they're very happy with the way that he's played. So I would assume – I mean, there is the one thing to keep in mind is, like, there's a trade freeze coming up in the NHL here in a couple weeks where you can't make any roster moves until after the Christmas break. I wonder if they want to just kind of wash their hands of this and move on before then. I mean, they're going to Toronto this weekend. He might get in there at some point this weekend. We'll see. But I feel like with his comments yesterday and the way that Barrie Trotz has discussed that this week, it probably behooves the Predators to just try and go ahead and move on from this one.
Well, we had Brunetta the other day, and the thing that the very plain comment he said was, I just wanted to play better. I mean, is it possible that Tyson Barrie, like he talked about in that quote with you, X's and O's, is it possible he just diminishes a player and he's not as good as he thinks he is?
Tyson Barrie has never been like some defensive shutdown
right, he's a nice offensive defenseman.
He's a quarterback on the power play. He runs the power play, and he's not on the first power play right now. Roman Yossi's on the first power play right now. You're not unseating Roman Yossi for Tyson Barrie. So, like, I get being frustrated that you're not being used the way that you think you should be used, and he's been on the third pairing all year. Bottom line is, though, defensively he's been awful. And that's why he was scratched, is because defensively he's not played well. So, play a little bit better defensively. I understand, like, if you're Barrie Trotz being bothered by, like, you sit the guy down one time, and this is his reaction to it, which is basically what he said with Jared the other day. You know, he sat down Alex Ovechkin once, and that's kind of wild to think about.
That is wild. Also, shout out to Jared. Nice job, man. Good interview on your show.
It. Yep, thanks.
Trying to say nice things about Jared.
Yep.
While we take over the show.
Applauding a guy for getting an interview with somebody he should get an interview with. I mean, that's what America's reduced to.
Can't you just play along one time and be nice to somebody? God,
Why?
What are you doing over there?
I'm
You're
cleaning my
wiping
phone.
your phone? You got an open locker room later? What's going on here?
I'm cleaning my phone. Also, my computer screen.
615
Care to use this? It's an excellent wipe.
1025
You can't
is
have
our
it.
phone number.
No, you can't have it.
Coming up next, it's time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode.
Oh, I hope
Typically,
he
Joe
brought
gets a
something
little
to it.
nervous when PK's
he's
in here. When the
very
rant
nervous.
comes.
Look at him.
So
he's red.
we'll see what happens coming up next.
The
This
red
is
road.
Robby and
coming
Rex
up.
Road, 1025, 1063, The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment, let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
Hey, I dare you to throw your sandwich at the bus driver. Do it, John.
Hey, who threw that?
I'll turn this damn bus around. That'll end your precious field trip pretty damn quick, huh?
It is that time of the day, time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode, an afternoon rant for Rexrode. Typically, he's a little cranky in the morning. Does he you get crankier as the day goes long?
Up?
I don't know if I get crankier. I mean, I've switched caffeine from coffee to pop, caffeine source. Yep. So as long as I have that on a drip, that was a great.
I went on a college football rant, and he shows off he's not from the South.
Pop.
Coincidence?
Jeez. Well, I'm just trying to. I'm trying to get everybody to say the correct thing. It's pop.
Nobody's saying that.
Ian, awesome intro right there. See, I get that. So sometimes Keezer has these references, movies that I just don't know, but I know that one, Billy Madison.
Billy Madison. Oh, that's a classic.
Of course. Absolutely. And that's very fitting because we can get into Titans, but I do want to talk a little bit about this morning. So I was very excited because Big Joe. Why are Big Joe and Chase here? Are they like, we only did 5 hours of radio. I want back in the studio.
They're headed down south, getting ready for Miami. They're headed to the airport.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're covering the game.
I don't think they're leaving early enough.
My goodness, yeah. It's not a Saturday night game, fellas.
Are they going to the baths?
They're running to Miami from the studio.
A little hitchhiking? Remember, 7-minute abs? 7-minute
Well,
abs.
they have a 6-connection flight, so they'll get there just in time.
So I was very excited this morning that I was able to drive my kids to school. I haven't done it in a long time. And, in fact, like we had it set up because my wife's gone this week, and so we had it set up like our neighbor was going to take the kids. And I said, no, I want to take the kids. She's like, no, it's really no problem. You know, I'm like, I actually want to take them. I mean, I could have, I guess, slept, but I'm not going to. You're not going to sleep past them getting up anyway, right? So I got up at 6:30. Well, good for you. 6:30, which is super sleeping in for us, and it was great. And it was like, all right, get the kids going, get some coffee and all that stuff. So 4 kids, 2 of mine, and then 2 others, and there was a little bit of dawdling, so we were a little bit late. So first of all, Nolensville High School and that complex, I've driven there many times. It's been a few years. It is now L.A. or Washington, D.C. rush hour traffic. It's unbelievable. Like, I guess we need another high school. I don't know.
You need more roads, more lanes.
There's that too. It's like 2 roads either way kind of thing. But anyway, so we're late, and it's just gridlock. I mean, we went like 0.1 of a mile in like 20 minutes, and basically one of my kids like, yeah, like 5 minutes ago, had we left 5 minutes earlier, it would have been fine. So we're late. So now I've got kids writing, please, excuse from detention, like, sign this, okay, notes and stuff. So we finally get up to like the school, and it's like, I mean, it's still close to the bell time. It's like it just rang, but it's like you can kind of maybe sneak in or whatever. So I'm driving around, and I won't name any kids, okay? But one of the kids said, yeah, no, you can go take that lane, Dad.
The male or the female kid?
I'm not saying anything. And so I said, oh, well, okay, boom. I take a left. All of a sudden, a bus is right behind me. I'm in a freaking bus lane. And I'm like, there's nothing you can do. I mean, the bus is behind me, honking. I mean, absolutely, probably screaming more than Chris Farley did in that clip. So I'm like, get out of the car, get out. So I'm angry. Then I start pulling up to get out, and a cop car pulls right in front of me, blocks my way, jumps out of the car, and starts yelling at me.
No ticket?
Well, I was sure I was going to get I should, he was reasonable, and I was very apologetic. I'm really sorry. I haven't taken my kids to school in a long time, and they said I could use that lane.
Look at this moron coming in the bus lane. Let's go get him.
So I want to apologize to the Nolensville community.
This is a rant? He's apologizing.
Yeah, I'm mad at my kids, okay? I'm mad at my kids, but I listen to them. So I guess that's the rant, Paul. I shouldn't listen to my kids. I don't know. Yeah, ever. Yeah. So,
I want you to rank your kids.
Yeah, I'm not
I
doing
once had you nearly ranking your kids.
Definitely.
You put your daughter number 1. Is she still number 1?
I'm not touching this. I'm not going to do it. I tell her she's my favorite daughter.
That's not cutting it.
Yeah.
So this story, can I spin off?
Yeah, sure.
It reminds me of it wasn't taking any kids to school. I lived in D.C., and I was dating a young lady in D.C., and we had house sat for a New York Times reporter who had a lovely house in Chevy Chase, Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And I had dropped something out of my bag and realized that I had dropped something out of my bag. So I need to turn around and go back to get it out of my bag. And I had a Secret Service cop on my tail. And I said, she lived in D.C. her whole life, the D.C. area. And I said, can a Secret Service cop give me a ticket? And she said, no. And so I went faster. And then I got pulled over and I got a ticket. And this was an instrumental factor in us breaking up.
James Bond gave you a speeding ticket. My goodness.
James Bond was not a Secret Service agent.
The Secret Service ended a
British.
relationship.
Intelligence. But the
British.
point is, it's an intelligence
This is an
agent.
American agent assigned to protection of the president
Yeah, that'd be
and
MI6.
other officials, and you're giving me a British guy. It's just a complete
Dude,
dodge.
how does someone live with you? I mean, I would love to know this.
Well, that person didn't. The Secret Service
She
was a direct cause
a big
for
strike
ending a
against
relationship.
I need to know. Your wife
Her
must
mother
be a
was an
saint.
editor at the New York Times who I loved dearly. Loved the daughter less after that incident.
How much was the ticket?
It was pricey for the money I was making at the time.
Well, thanks for hijacking my rant.
Well, the rant was
pulled
poor.
over.
I tried to save it with a little story that was entertaining.
You know what's going to happen next week? Like when you're on Wednesdays, hey, Robbie, you want to take the rant when PK's here? You want to do the rant this
He
time?
makes
when
fun of
PK's
my
here?
rants.
I'm sorry that, by the way, taking your kids to school is no big thrill. Like, pass on it every chance you
Well,
get.
it's been years, though.
Yeah. I mean, did you guys have an enlightening conversation, or were they both on their phones?
Well, again, there were 4. So there were like each basically with a friend. So, yeah, there was not much conversation. But what I do is I make them listen to my music. So, and then I
And
feel
they don't
better.
have earbuds in?
Some Wu-Tang.
They're not listening to your music.
I didn't play Wu-Tang, but yes, Wu-Tang. I played some Beastie Boys.
BK, you made a point on the Titans earlier that I think is pretty interesting, the speed part of this, because one thing I remember Vrabel talking about last offseason was getting faster and having to play with more speed. And you don't believe the Titans have accomplished that mission as you watched them play at 4-8 this year.
Well, I mean, Sean Murphy Bunting has reasonable speed. Al-Shaair has excellent speed, but he has to run around people if somebody gets in his face. Titans are not fast. DeAndre Hopkins has played very effectively, but he is not fast. Don't say that anywhere near him, or you'll end up engaged in a very long conversation, as I have at least once. But they're not faster. And then the things that Kelly said about it were relatively ridiculous. We're going to play faster in a way that makes us faster. The way you play faster in the NFL is with faster people. You think Miami, a very fast team, looks at the Titans and go, whoa, they're getting in and out of the huddle fast. We better brace ourselves. We're in big trouble here. The way NWI is getting out of the huddle and getting over to his position
Gotta
is
pick on
very
him.
intimidating. That is threatening stuff. Miami is fast. The Titans need to watch Miami on Monday night and then aspire to get something like that.
One thing I will say, though, is Miami also schematically takes advantage of
Yes.
it and
They have those running
misdirection.
starts.
Yeah, they have. I mean, you can do whatever you want with Tyreek Hill, and Sean's also an absolute blazer. But also, like, they schematically make themselves faster, right? So
Yeah.
there is something to that.
The Titans don't seem to schematically make themselves faster, though they seem to talk a lot about their intent to make themselves schematically faster. But can you find a moment that you feel like, whoa, that was surprisingly quick?
I mean, NWI
I mean,
on
they
his
talked
touchdown
about
catch.
empty and tempo a lot in the offseason, where I thought we were going to see some times of tempo. And they're complaining about not getting a lot of offensive snaps. Well, when you wait until the play clock is at 0 for every snap, surprise, you're not going to get very many offensive snaps.
Though if
When
you have a
combine
3 and
that
out
with
either
going
way,
3
it's
and
the same
out.
thing. But,
Well, right.
yeah.
If you're going 3 and out and using every second of the play clock, there aren't going to be many offensive snaps. It doesn't seem to add up into what you're saying you want to do.
Wasn't that tempo was kind of good?
The Atlanta game, NWI, didn't he get clocked at like 21 miles an hour
That
on
is
touchdown.
true. They had
Burner.
been clocked.
And
Derrick Henry.
And Derrick
has been-
Henry just hit a good thing.
Mhm.
But that's when you get to open up and go.
Right.
And you have to
They can't
get
find
to the
space.
spot where you can open up and go.
Spears
and those
is
spots are
fast.
rare.
I mean, Spears
is fast.
brings a speed element.
Spears was an addition of speed for sure.
There's no question, especially though at receiver, they need to be faster than they
Yes.
are.
And Chig can open up and go, but Chig can no longer catch the ball or get open. So, I mean, he does it once in a while, but he's nothing like we thought he was going to be based off what he did last year. And you have to wonder now. You know, I mean, they need a tight end. Do they need a number one tight end? I would argue absolutely.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Coming up next, how does Paul Kaharski view the Derrick Henry situation and whether or not he should return next season for the Titans? We'll get into that. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025, and Joe's leaving us. There's that.
It didn't work. We didn't do it. You were supposed to insult me, and I was supposed to do a pro wrestling thing and throw something at you and leave.
I was supposed to do.
Rexrode's all about theatrics.
I was told not to mention you were leaving.
Until now, you totally blew it. God,
I can't believe.
Now I'm mad. I'm leaving.
I can't believe you're leaving. It's so weak.
I think it was poorly explained by Rexrode.
It wasn't explained at all. I was told not to mention you're leaving.
737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Hour number 3, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com. Ian Safar here with you on this Friday morning. A hostile takeover of the Stillman & Company program today. So we're taking over Jared's show today, and now Rexrode has completely abandoned us for the next 2 hours.
Shocking.
It's absurd. Is this protest from Rexrode because of his love for Stillman?
Probably. I thought he was leaving for the last hour, and it turned into 2 hours. So it's a little bit really shocking. And I'm surprised at what the bosses, tend to allow. But they're hooking me up with airtime, so see you, Joe. Take care.
Joe,
Bye-bye.
have a great weekend.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoy whatever you do this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that guy's eager to take kids that don't talk to him to school and that they put him in the bus lane. So, I mean, what kind of logic is going on with him right now?
615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts all show long. By the way, Peter King going to be joining the show at 5:15. So looking forward to that. We'll get into the Titans, his viewpoints on Mike Vrabel, Will Levis, and a whole lot more with Peter King coming up at 5:15. So make sure you're tuned in for that. Derrick Henry, PK, obviously he was having a great game on Sunday. Then he takes the hit to the head that pulls him from the game, and he wasn't in concussion protocol, which was an interesting situation of its own. But we were having this conversation the other day on the show about what the value could be for bringing Henry back next year. I think you would agree that the market for Henry is not going to be a huge one. At least I don't think so this offseason. We know what the position of running back is now in today's league. It's been devalued. You're just not going to find a huge contract. I mean, you're having 24, 25-year-olds struggling to find the big contracts, much less a guy that's going to be 30 coming up in January. So how much value from the Titans' perspective do you think there would be in bringing Derrick Henry back, having him remain in the backfield and being a weapon for this team, being a leader on the team, helping Will Levis as he continues to get adjusted to life in the NFL? Or is it as simple as this was the last year of the Tannehill-Henry era, and they're going to move on from both of them at the end of the year, and it just is what it is? How do you view the Henry situation beyond this year?
My gut says he's likely gone. But you have to look. I mean, this could help him or hurt him. The free agent list of running backs is ridiculous. Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, Dalvin Cook, who's been invisible this year. I don't know. He might be hurt. Austin Eckler, Gus Edwards, Ezekiel Elliott again, DeAndre Swift even. I mean, that is a meaty list. Plus, everybody likes to get their running backs in the draft.
Yep.
I don't know what kind of draft it is for running backs, but there's always plenty, right? So does the fact that there are so many out there reduce any interest there'd be in him from other teams because he's such a unique back that, the Titans are mostly his market? Or does somebody else want him? The first thing is that the Titans want him. He might be screwed if the Titans don't want him, But I think his market value is going to be very favorable to the Titans if they want him. Now, I'm looking at Spotrac, one of the two big salary cap things, and they say his market is 2 years, $19 million.
I would be shocked.
I think that's outrageously high. I think it's 2 years, $10 million, with the second year is just paper. I mean, I think you could get him for $4 or $5 million, which is nothing, and which is not going to make him happy. And he's a great teammate. He is everything about the way he carries himself is high quality, first class. Is he going to be able to do that if he's not signed until after the draft? I think he gets himself there eventually. But what's it like for Derrick Henry if he all of a sudden is kind of like a second-class citizen in terms of how he comes in? Things change in a big way. My feeling is that they probably go forward with Tyjae Spears as the number one, and then Henry would be on the flip side of that. But the thing is, Henry being on the flip side of that, he'd still be – his carries would come at the top. He's a first, second down guy. Spears is a third down guy. He would just get more carries on first and second down. And you look at Henry's production, I mean, he's still producing well. He's just not getting as many carries as he's used to. I don't know where he goes that he gets the 16 carries he's getting now, better yet the 22 that he'd like. So he's in a very, very difficult position. He's going to be just north of 30, which, shouldn't be such a hard line. But it just is for so many people. And what the Titans are trying to do here is be early instead of late. And I know the guy is otherworldly outside of the Jones fracture.
Yeah.
But all of these guys, no matter how otherworldly they are, there's an Adrian Peterson every once in a while, but most of them just fall off a cliff. And I think they're going to try to anticipate the falling off a cliff. And if they were, in fact, looking into dealing him during the offseason and looking again at dealing him as they sorted out the trade deadline time, that seems to indicate that they're not going to be super eager to resign.
I agree with that. Now, I will say, personally, I've shifted on this because I thought heading into the year that this was Tannehill and Henry's last year. You get one more kick at the can. And, I mean, the writing on the wall was there from Tannehill, but even Henry, it's time to move on, you separate, and that's what it is. I do think he can still play. And the reason I think the Titans should seriously consider bringing him back is because I don't think it's going to cost a ton because of everything you just said. I don't think the market for him is going to be a huge one. Like, if you're him, I'd be really interested to see how he views it because is he going to chase the bag and try to get as much money as he can this offseason? Is he going to go ring chasing and try to take a reduced role maybe somewhere else where he's got an opportunity to win? There's the Hall of Fame part of this that you got to consider if you're him too, which I think will matter in this discussion. But if you're the Titans, like I think you're going to be able to get him relatively inexpensively. The 2 years, $19 million thing is absurd to me. Like I don't think he's going to even approach that with the contract.
You raised the Hall of Fame thing. I don't know him well enough to know where that ranks in importance. I think ring chasing is bogus. Like, you have no idea where you're going to win a ring and how you're going to factor in. We've seen backs go places and do. Dalvin Cook, I need to check on Dalvin Cook, but he's been an absolute non-factor for the Jets. I don't know did he get hurt?
I don't think so. Not majorly.
Dalvin Cook's a good back. The only case of a team ditching a guy and feeling it backfiring is Minnesota now, where Madison is not much.
Right.
And they gave up on Dalvin Cook.
Dalvin Cook's played 12 games, by the way.
Okay.
59 carries, 197 yards.
So, they're just not using him, and I don't know why exactly. But I think the Hall of Fame chase for both sides, and I don't know how, it's not super important for the Titans, but it'd be nice if he was a career Titan or a longer career Titan. He's got his best chance of getting the Hall of Fame playing more for the Titans. He's going to get, still, I would think, more carries with the Titans. He's going to get, if they commit to him as their short yardage back, he's going to get the touchdowns with the Titans. And those numbers will get better with the Titans faster than they'll get elsewhere, in my estimation. And so if that's important to him, I think this would be the place to be. And I think he would want to be here, barring them really hurting his feelings with the offer. The thing is, there's probably not going to be an offer early. And when the offer comes, it's probably going to hurt his feelings. That said, if there's no offer from anywhere else or the offer from somewhere else is only slightly better, how do you weigh that? So the Titans really need to massage the hurt feelings part of it, and it's a big, complicated deal.
Do you think there's value, though, on having him here for Levis? From the standpoint of, like, the Titans, obviously, along with offensive line, they've got to upgrade wide receiver. And, Hopkins is under contract next year, but they've got to upgrade wide receiver to where NWI is not your number 2 running around out there. And we're going to get into the Treylon Burks part of this a little bit later. But do you think there's value in having him here for Levis and the attention that he could potentially still command with defenses next season?
I think for Levis and for the offense and for leadership and for the sake of not having to go fill one of your top 2 running back spots. Unless you're thinking like Jonathan Ward's our guy or something like that, which I don't foresee. Yeah, I think there's value in all of those things. And I'm like you, I've swung more to the idea of having him back. I think he looked pretty good on Sunday. And I think it's hard not to think that with a better offensive line, he could still be pretty effective. I do think he's lost a little bit of I don't think there's any questioning that. A lot of people are looking at him hitting that speed the other day, which was great. But that's after he gets going, and you got to get him somewhere first. If they can fix the offensive line, which I said earlier, I don't have a lot of faith that they necessarily can. It should be better at least, though. But I said that last year with full confidence. And so how many years, my philosophy is if I say that once and get burned, then I'll say, well, I'll believe they can fix the offensive line when I see them fix the offensive line. But if the offensive line is better, Derrick Henry 2024 should be, a more than sufficient running back to pair with Tyjae Spears, and they should be good at running back. Now, can you paper a deal for him that makes him happy? That really is only a one-year deal? There's a lot of massaging to do there. Also, I think they got to keep the fan base happy to a degree, and that should factor in. There are a lot of Bayard jerseys still in the stands.
Yep.
Right? And the only guy who's really a bedrock of this team is Simmons. And now you have Levis, who I think we're all pretty confident saying is the quarterback of the future. But he hasn't done anything yet. And so if you part with Henry, you really have turned it over. And I think a lot of people want to see it turned over, but not to that degree. And so what's the harm in keeping a guy that can still be productive for another year at a low price who's going to help you transition and lead? That's where does he want to go somewhere that's got a better future next year question.
There is one part of the Henry discussion that I think some Titans fans are worried about in terms of philosophy and what it can mean that I don't think they should be worried about. We'll get into that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Were you encouraged by the success you had in the run game before having to leave, or in the fourth quarter? And that's something you feel like you need to build on this week to try to keep the ball away from them?
Let's just say it's a little better than the week before. A lot of good things to build off of. Thought the line did a great job. Everybody blocking did a great job, and I just had to go out there and do my job. And it definitely made it a little easier last Sunday, even though we didn't come up to win. But I thought they did a great job.
As Derrick Henry, everything looks good for him this week in terms of his availability heading into the game on Monday Night Football. Took the hit on Sunday against the Colts. Looks like he's going to be good to go coming up this weekend for the Titans against the Dolphins. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode.
No outs declared today because today is not the last day of the practice week with a Monday night game. So that won't come until tomorrow, and practice is not open tomorrow. We've had our 3 days technically. So a little progress on the practice report if I get it out here. Danico Autry went from limited to full. Aaron Brewer went from limited to full. Luke Gifford went from limited to full. DeAndre Hopkins and TK McClendon. Brunskill with his ankle was limited today after full yesterday. Still out, Fulton, Joe Jones, who went to IR, Jeffrey Simmons with the knee, who's not playing this week, we know. Stonehouse went to IR, and Josh Wiley did not practice with the knee. I'm not expecting him to play either.
Well, and regardless of what you think about Fulton and his future here with the Titans, which is not going to be a future after this year, not a great week to not have Christian Fulton out there.
You need him out here. And on the run game, the one thing that, I mean, it's kind of understood, but we haven't talked a lot about it specifically, is kind of the run game attitude that this team has been built around and has had for a long time. This offensive line is not good. And we've talked a lot about it from the pass protection aspect because that's where it's most apparent. But for a long time and in a lot of iterations, the Titans' offensive line, the run left hat was no accident that Mike Vrabel wore. And Lewan and Saffold brought that. And, a lot of us go back to, Olsen and Pillar and the slobberknocker kind of guys that represented what this team had. And the left tackle continuity where you went from Hopkins to Roos to Lewan and all of that. There's no feeling, as far as I'm concerned, you tell me if you disagree, that these guys are going to go out and push people back.
No.
In the run game. And that's been missing for a while now. And
I think
without
it's better
that,
than pass protection, but yes, it's missing.
And
sure.
without that, goes some of Henry's magical powers.
Right.
And they had it very deeply when you think that in his 2,000-yard season, Lewan disappeared halfway through, and then Ty Sembrilo went down, and then David Quesenberry. There were 3 left tackles deep that year and ran for 2,000 yards. They go 3 left tackles deep now. You got to build a bomb shelter to protect people.
It's bad. There's no question about that. There is one part of the Henry discussion.
And they are 3 left tackles deep
they
now.
Are. Yeah.
Really, because Petit Frere was the second option behind Dillard.
And now you've gone to Duncan.
So Dillard's benched, and Petit Frere is out, and you're to Radin's on the left, and Duncan's on the left, and Radin's on the right.
Yep.
That's 4 left tackles who are playing.
Yeah, and it's a disaster. There's no question about that. On the Henry front, there is one part that I hear, and I understand it from Titans fans because it's been this way for a while, and that is, well, if you keep Derrick Henry around, you're always going to have an offense that's built around Derrick Henry. And I don't know that I buy that moving forward. Like I think if you're bringing him back, I mean, you're already starting to see it a little bit. Henry, traditionally he's 350, close to 400 carries. Right now he's on pace for 279. And that would be the fewest amount. He had the 215 or whatever it was a couple years ago when he got hurt. He was on pace for 400 carries that year. This would be the fewest amount of carries he's had since 2018 when he took over eventually as the full-time starter that year in Vrabel's first season. So you're already starting to see them scale him back, and I think that would continue if you decided to bring him back.
Yeah.
So if I'm a Titans fan, I'm not worried about, if you bring Derrick Henry back, you're going to build the entire offense around Derrick Henry moving forward.
No, I agree with that. But part of that then is him. Like, does he think he can go somewhere where it'll be like that for him? I don't think anybody's going to do that for him for a 30 20-year-old running back.
I agree.
It's just not the way teams build rushing offenses because you can draft somebody. I'm not saying you can draft Derrick Henry, but I'm saying you could draft a guy to go with the guy you have to get what you want out of the running game when you're going to throw it more than the Titans throw it. But I do think there is something to be said, Robbie, for the idea that symbolically you can make it Will Levis's team and go get 2 receivers, 1 in free agency and 1 in the draft, and restock that offensive line more with pass blockers than with ideally with guys who can do both. But even in this little iteration of the offensive line, the guys they brought in were technically better pass blockers than run protectors. And we thought, Mike Herndon wrote about it at my site, we thought this was an inkling that there was change was afoot. It didn't turn out to mean anything, but it could have meant something.
Yeah.
It could have had some intention behind it. And so maybe they go further that way, and by parting with Derrick Henry, they're making a statement that they're heading that direction. And that the second back to go with Spears needs to be more capable. And listen, I know Derrick Henry fans out there are going to say he catches the ball fine and he does a lot with those screens, but his pass catching is limited. He faces the quarterback and he catches only a certain kind of pass, a certain variety of pass. And Spears, they haven't thrown to him a lot, but he can catch the route tree, really. And if you get another back who can fill the Henry role sufficiently, but also can catch all of those passes, then you're a much more diverse offense and a much less predictable offense. And that they talked about a lot last year. You're not going to be able to determine what we do by the personnel on the field. Well, you can still very much determine what they're going to do by the running back personnel on the field.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Well, on the Hall of Fame front, how much work do you still feel like he's got left to do? He's at 9,176 yards, 86 touchdowns. Obviously, if he doesn't get hurt in 2021 and he's got back-to-back 2,000-yard seasons, which is what he was on pace for before he got hurt, this discussion might already be over, in my opinion. But, I mean, you're as familiar with the Hall of Fame as anybody. What do you think is still left in front of Derrick Henry to get there?
Sadly for him, if he doesn't get hurt in 2021 and the second half of 2021 matches the first half of 2021, he would have had the best 3-year stretch in history, I think.
Yeah.
Better than Adrian Peterson's 3-year stretch. And I think that makes him a Hall of Fame lock. But he did get hurt there. And so I think he's left wanting. And I know people hate to hear this. I've talked to other people. There are some people who are more hesitant than others to discuss a current guy, and what his fate will be. Definitely needs 10,000 yards. Some people think 12,000 yards because of the shifting importance of running backs. And obviously, he's the best at what he does, but what he does is not what the league does now. So some people will say, well, that makes him the outlier that has to get in, a lot of people I talk to. But others, I think, and the committee more thinks like, it's kind of dinosaurish as compared to what a running back needs to do now, which is like McCaffrey or Eckler, who I'm not saying are Hall of Famers. But I ran some numbers here, right? So if you look at McCaffrey, who's also in his 8th season, he's good for 114 yards a game. He scores 0.89 touchdowns a game. Henry's good for 93 yards a game and 0.78 touchdowns a game. So he's a tick behind McCaffrey there, more than a tick, 10 yards, 11 yards a game. Touchdowns, they're relatively close.
And that's factoring in rushing and receiving.
Right.
Yeah.
All purpose. 5.75 yards per touch per McCaffrey, 5.06 yards per touch for Henry. Right? And if you go back to look at Eddie George, who's a semifinalist this year, this is, I think, what holds him back. What holds him back is his 3.6 yards per carry, right? But he's from a different era. He was 89.8 yards per game. Also, he didn't score a lot of touchdowns, 0.55 per game. 4.06 yards per touch. He didn't catch the ball a lot and didn't do a lot with it when he caught the ball. Now, to Henry's credit, I compare him to Adrian Peterson, who's a shoo-in, right? I think he's eligible, might still be 2 years off because he tried to string it out at the end when he was here, right? So Henry's 93 yards a game, total yards. Peterson, 94.5 yards a game, same. Peterson, 0.68 touchdowns a game. Henry, 0.78, better. Peterson, 4.92 yards per touch. Henry, better, 5.06. So he looks better than Peterson in a lot of that stuff. That's the case I'll be making if I'm presenting him, when I'm presenting him, if he gets into the final 15. And he's got a lot of stellar things in terms of the 200 yards per game, and being at the top of that.
Yeah.
His explosive stuff, his long runs. He's off the charts in stuff like that. And I found this interesting. Gene Fournette of the Jacksonville paper, who covers Henry from a hometown guy stuff, wrote that among the 16 Hall of Fame eligible backs who won multiple NFL rushing titles, only Byron Whizzer White, who's obviously an old-timer, and he only played 3 seasons, isn't enshrined in Canton. So if he could win a second rushing title, you really set yourself apart. Isn't it crazy that there are only 16 guys who won multiple rushing titles? That's because a couple guys won a whole bunch of rushing titles.
Absolutely.
Right? Peyton, Emmett, Jim Brown, and the like. But, I mean, it's a really hot debate. I wrote at the beginning of the year I thought Spears would hurt Henry. And I think he has to a degree, but the thing is, the red zone stuff has really hurt Henry. Right? I thought he'd be a shoo-in to get to 100 touchdowns this year. And it's not so easy because they don't get down there.
Exactly. 615-737-1025, our phone number. More on the Titans coming up next. Other than Will Levis, who are the most important Titans that Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel have to evaluate and make a decision on by the end of this season? We'll get into that coming up next. Got some tickets to give away to see Bill Burr coming up live at Bridgestone Arena on Friday, May 17th. Be caller number 5, 615-737-1025, our phone number. Caller 5 will win a pair of tickets to see Bill Burr at Bridgestone Arena coming up on Friday, May the 17th. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in. If you're searching for Jared Stillman, not going to find him today.
Hey, it's your lucky day.
Not going to find him today. Robbie Stanley, Paul Koharski here with you on this Friday afternoon.
Tough break, tough kid.
We have successfully commandeered his program today.
He's been replaced. New lineup.
We'll see whether or not he gets it back coming up on Monday. We're streaming live as well. You can see my beloved bald head, PK's bald head on the stream as
You
well.
usually wear a hat. Why no hat today? You want to be honest with the new audience?
Freshly shaven. I look pretty aerodynamic right now.
Me too.
Looking
I
good,
had to
yeah.
shave, but
Both you guys looking good.
Let the beard go a little
Look
bit.
at Ian sucking up to us a little bit.
Well, Ian was trying to adjust your posture over there.
Yeah, Ian, I came in and he was fiddling with the camera.
That's
and
right.
I asked him to lift the camera because lifting the camera would lift
To
my
help
posture.
your posture. That's right,
And he
yes.
fiddled with the camera a bunch, and the camera, I think, is probably lower.
It looks
than
much more centered now.
I
Don't
think
worry.
it was lower than it was when you started. So I think you get an F in terms of raising the camera. But
Your
I mean, I
posture
appreciate
looks-
that you
Your posture
tried.
looks good right now.
I think maybe you could blame the equipment. A good craftsman doesn't blame his tools, but I think the equipment is not up to your standards.
Yeah, that
Can
could
we say
be
that?
could be fair. Yeah,
be
that's a fair statement.
How do
Sure.
you feel about that beard? How long have you been working on that?
Oh, this is just a lazy beard. This
Lazy
is like
beard?
yeah, shave once a month, let it go, and then shave once a month.
You ever
yeah.
trim up the neck a little
That's
bit?
the part that they say I need to trim up. The
They
most.
say, yeah.
Yeah, the wife
Yeah.
and they
You
trim
have
up.
a wife?
Can you believe that? I know.
You going beard in the wintertime?
And so yeah, actually I have 2 kids as well.
Holy-
believe it or not.
How old are you?
So I am 40, about to be 41.
Doesn't he look like he's like
disguises
25 years
that
old?
age very well.
I'm
Ian's
about
a
to be
good-looking
41
cat.
next month. Yep.
Ian and I are getting closer as it comes. I mean, I thought you were,
No,
like
I'm not too young
26
yet.
like Stillman, and that we couldn't be friends
26.
because of the age.
I'll
gap.
take 26, but
Yeah. Well, then you had some kids that are older than you probably.
Not
that
quite.
would be difficult. How old are your kids?
4 and almost 2.
Look at me
So
and
they're
Ian getting
young.
to know each other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This
you
is
shave-
good. This
you
is
shave
a
up-
bonding moment.
This is a nice
You
bonding.
shave
yeah.
up that neck and we can hang.
Okay. Sounds
Soon I'll be calling you behind Stillman's back.
You going out of
My
beard in the
uncle loves
wintertime?
Bruce Springsteen too.
Loves him or knows him?
Loves him.
Oh.
Yeah, he doesn't know.
I mean,
him,
everybody loves him.
Yeah.
It's-
Well, not
Impress
everybody.
me with something.
He's all right.
Everybody with sense
PK's
and
got,
a certain age.
You going beard in the wintertime, PK?
No.
What are we doing?
No.
No?
I'm like him. I don't shave very often. And then when it gets to a certain level, I just use the trimmer to get it down instead of shaving.
How about this from Ricky on YouTube? I completely disagree that it's predictable when Henry's on the field. Have you guys ever seen a running back that has a better play action effect? No, you haven't. And it's because it hasn't been utilized properly this year. This is from Ricky.
Well, if they're not utilizing it properly, it doesn't. Let's break that down. Have you ever seen a running back with a better play action effect? He has a very good play action effect. They haven't been utilizing it. So I'm not seeing the effect. See how that breaks down in the second part? Look, I honestly, I mean, we could go days on this.
Yeah.
We've talked for a long time about the Titans' need to get a deep receiver with actual speed, not like, I mean, A.J. Brown was very fast and he played fast and all of that stuff, but still was not like your quintessential fast receiver.
And I'm not talking Khalif Raymond, 6 wide receiver
Right.
either. Yeah.
We're talking about a top 3, scare them when he lines up, have to know where he is taking a safety and making you account for him wide receiver that would back people up off of the line for Derrick Henry. The numbers are probably down now, right? And he's off the field more. But I thought, because average depth of target for Will Levis is the best in the league,
Yep.
that maybe Will Levis's arm was going to be the thing that does this. But look, the fact of the matter is you got to have the arm and the speed together. And we still haven't seen that combination. And look, that's not a knock at Ryan Tannehill because Ryan Tannehill's tied for the second best average depth of target. So whatever you want to say about the Titans, they try to push the ball down the field. They just refuse to acknowledge the importance of a fast receiver in the formula. And this is the other fascinating thing about receiver, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about this. Ryan Tannehill, I've written about it, likes big receivers, all right? How much of his like of big receivers has been the reason that they've gone with so many big receivers?
Yep.
And how much is it a Mike Vrabel, Rob Moore, and the coordinators thing.
You
We're
better be
going
able to block.
find that out, all right? Calvin Ridley is, not small, but he's not big. His blocking grades are not tremendous, but they show a willingness. Is Calvin Ridley a guy that's eliminated based on that stuff? Or is Calvin Ridley a guy they're willing to bring in and say, we can get him to block well enough for us, and we want that element of speed? And when they look in the draft, will they look at a guy like Zay Flowers, who's an absolute difference maker in Baltimore? Or is a guy like that crossed off their list because he doesn't fit their MO? If they're crossing guys like that off their list before they even get to them,
it's a mistake.
It eliminates an X factor from their offense that they desperately need. I don't want them to consider every guy. And some guys have been brought in that are ridiculous. I mean, Jeff Fisher used to bring in with the Rams, I can't remember the one guy's name that he just kept insisting was a player who wasn't a player, a teeny guy. I don't want Tutu Atwell.
Is it Tavon Austin?
Tavon Austin.
Yeah.
Tavon Austin was not a player, and the Rams kept insisting he was a player. I don't want that.
Yeah.
But you got to open the envelope more than they've opened the envelope. So they limit themselves so much, and then, they laugh at us on TV while they Josh Downs goes somewhere else.
They did do that. Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Mark in Clarksville. Mark, good afternoon. Thanks for calling in.
Good afternoon, guys. Just wanted to throw out to the show, any thoughts about Derrick Henry as a potential Hall of Fame candidate? He has a number of touchdown passes. I wonder if gadget plays like that go to show his versatility and if that is of any merit for the Hall of Fame.
Thanks for the call, Mark.
But
Appreciate
he's
it.
not particularly versatile. I don't know how many touchdown passes he's thrown, but no, that's not. If I had 5 minutes to talk about Derrick Henry to the Hall of Fame committee, I would not mention his touchdown throws in those 5 minutes. What would be important are his touchdown catches, and those are 3. And so I certainly wouldn't be emphasizing that. I would not be talking about his deficiencies as a receiver when McCaffrey has 27 touchdown catches. And that's part of what makes him such a versatile guy. Derrick Henry's sales pitch is kind of that he is an incredibly unique guy in that as a 2-down back, he's run for 9,176 yards, near the end of 8 seasons. And hopefully for him, we'll be at 10 or 11 or 12. And there may never be another back like him in the lifetime of the committee that I'm talking to.
Yep. Let's go back to our 102.5 The Game phone line. Welcome in Cedric. Cedric, good afternoon. Thanks for calling in.
Robby, what's good, man? And it is an honor to talk to the Grinch that stole football, man. What's up, Paul? How you doing, man?
How are we doing? Good to hear from you.
Man, I'm good, bro. Hey, Paul, what do you make of Vrabel's inability to beat winning teams? By my calculation, he's 18-30 against teams with a winning record, and he has 0 wins against head coaches in his own division right now. He got swept last year, already lost to Peterson, and already got swept by Steichen, and he's probably not going to beat Ryans. Do you think if we lose to Houston in our uniforms and it's bad, Miss Amy will finally get rid of that bum?
Thanks for calling.
Well, I wish you stayed on. I think you were pretty excited when they beat Kansas City. I think at Kansas City. I think you were pretty excited when they had like 16 days off and were huge underdogs on a Tuesday night at home against Buffalo, who was favored by probably 11, and they dressed down Buffalo on national TV. So I think to cast it the way you do, I mean, the numbers are the numbers. But the Titans have had some pretty big wins under Mike Vrabel. And I mean, he beat Belichick, more often than not, head-to-head, including Brady. So let's not pretend he hasn't had impressive victories against good teams with good coaches and good quarterbacks. They're in the midst of a bad 2-year run that to me is a cyclical thing that's a result of some really bad personnel decisions that he was not the final decision maker on. And, if you go back and give them reasonably talented first-round picks where they took Isaiah Wilson, where they took Caleb Farley, reasonable second-round picks where they took Dylan Radins, reasonable first-round pick where they took Treylon Burks, who's not panning out, reasonable third-round picks where they took Monty Rice and Darrington Evans, and I've forgotten a lot of people there, but just give them solid starters in all of those spots, and it's a completely different football team. To me, and this is my stance, and I think Joe is on record as saying the same thing. I think if Robby will comment here. Mike Vrabel has been a good football coach with a reasonably good roster, with a framework of a good roster where he's then been able to fill in specific people around that who could do narrow jobs. And then he's outcoached people and played very good football. And I think if you get him a roster like that, he could do that again. And he can do it better than a lot of people and a lot of options to replace him. And I think that sort of stability is healthy for the franchise and would be good for Will Levis. And that would be how I'd move forward.
I agree. I mean, there are things Vrabel does that I think are irritating to the fan base. I think sometimes the way that he acts in the press conference can be irritating to the fan base, especially when you're losing. That's the thing. When you're winning, people love it. And when you're losing, people hate it. And look, they're going to be, I would assume, I haven't looked at it. My guess is they're probably underdogs from here on out in every game. I mean, you end up 4-13, and we'll see if they can win one or two of these games down the stretch here. You end up 4-13, that means you've lost 20 of your last 24 games to end this regular season. I get the frustration from the fan base. I still believe the roster is the biggest issue, and if you can get that fixed this offseason, then I think Vrabel can turn things around. But you lose 20-24 in the NFL, Paul, which they haven't done yet, but if it ends up going that way, that's why the fan base is going to be.
You're going to take grief, and you deserve to take grief. And he knows that. He's not expecting people to be pleased with the product that's been on the field the last 2 years or the last year and a half. It's not been good. And if you think he won't, if he's here, work crazily to fix it. But, I mean, if there's potential that Robert Kraft wants him, I'll say it again. If one of the 5 best owners in the league and a guy that's going to end up in the Hall of Fame wants your coach, that's a pretty damn big signal that you've got a good coach, a coach worth keeping, I think.
Coming up next, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the Treylon Burks part of this and get to some Titans that have a lot to prove as this season closes out here. 615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll have Peter King coming up at 5:15. All that ahead. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Join Jared Stillman, Chris Sanders, and Derek Mason at Twin Peaks in Madison this Monday from 4 to 6 p.m. for our NFL pregame show. We'll break down the Titans' Week 14 matchup against the Dolphins, give you the latest updates before the game. NFL pregame show presented by Parma Tractor and Equipment and Beast Unleashed. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, Robbie Stanley, Paul Kuharski, Ian Safar here with you on this Friday morning. PK, as you look at the rest of this season for the Titans and think about what the roster could look like heading into the offseason, heading into next year, is there anybody that even approaches Treylon Burks in terms of players with the most to prove for the Titans the rest of the season? Obviously, you want to see Levis do well and all those things and continue to try to determine if he's the answer at quarterback as you move forward here. But it's a massive stretch here for Burks, who has done basically nothing so far this year. Honestly,
I see one guy on the roster who could really influence his future in what's left, and it's not Treylon Burks. The die to me is cast on everybody on this roster except one guy, Jalen Duncan, who could establish that he should be a piece of what goes on the offensive line.
Yep.
Beyond this, and a lot of people, including Blake Bedingfield, who the former Titan scout who writes at paulkuharski.com, thinks he's better cast as a guard ultimately than as a tackle. But more power to him. Whatever kind of effective snaps he can get on tape between now and the end of the season, gives them potentially a piece that they can count on to some degree between now and then. Treylon Burks is not it. I'm not calling him a bust. But I think he's what I call a gravy guy. They need a high draft pick at wide receiver and a top free agent. And then Hopkins is the third guy in that mix. I'm not saying he ranks third at the start of the season. Burks, at best, can go into the season as the fourth option. If he's higher than the fourth option, they're counting on him too much. And they can't count on him more than the fourth option. And really, he ought to be co-fourth option with another free agent or another draft pick. The die is cast there. He's not earned. There's nothing he can do for the remainder of the season that would up his trustworthiness. And not all of that is his fault. You can't. I know people want desperately to blame guys for being hurt. I mean, you can't blame him for smashing his head on the turf.
Right.
In Pittsburgh.
Or the headshot last year against Philly.
And the knee injury is, it's a bad luck thing. But when guys stack up injuries, they become injury prone. I'd like to at least set the concussions aside into a different department. But he's had 2 of those. So then you become concussion prone to a degree, whether it's fair or not. But the thing about Treylon Burks is that aside from the injuries, we see guys get hurt, and then when they come back from being hurt, they get back on track, right? Skoronski came back from the appendectomy after just 1 game, and he wasn't himself, and he wasn't great, but he plugged back in, and he recommenced with his job and plowed forward. That's just the guy I'm thinking of off the top of my head, right?
What Burks have, 9 snaps Sunday?
Burks comes back in, and in this instance, he only had 9 or 10 snaps, and they say, well, he wasn't in the meetings and all of this. But it's not just this time. When Burks comes back from whatever Burks has, I would bet the under every time on whatever the number is for him to do whatever. Snaps, catches, touches, whatever. He's got this incredibly long ramp. The Concorde jet, I guess, needed a huge ramp, right, to take off at supersonic speed.
Yep.
Burks has that ramp. He's not going to just drop in and pick up where he left off when he was at his best and resume from there. He goes back to square one. It's like landing on go. Do you get sent to jail if you land on go?
I think so.
Right? He lands on go every time. He gets sent to jail. He needs to roll 3 times to get out and miss 3 turns. That's Treylon Burks. And it's been that way every time. It's always a hard restart. It's not a soft restart. It's not he was going pretty good. He's going to go pretty good again. It's this long ramp.
Bottom line is he's got 8 catches this year. He's got 8 catches for 122 yards in 6 games.
After a spectacular offseason.
Right.
Which there was nothing phony about the offseason. Worked his ass off, took a private plane to get back in town when he got delayed, got the asthma under control, lost weight, got in condition, said everything right, did everything right. Was a tremendous offseason.
Sure.
And
But he's got 8
then
catches.
the wheels come off.
He's got 8 catches, and not only does he have 8, he's got 8 catches for 122 yards. And 70 of those came on one play.
And they got to give him an end around to get him involved.
Exactly.
They can't figure out how to get him involved. I asked Kelly this week, why is it such an effort to get him involved? Well, he won't agree with the premise. Well, I'm sorry, you won't agree with the premise. It's a fact. You cannot get him involved.
The numbers are what they are. And look, injuries are part of it for sure. But even when he's been healthy this year, he's made one play. He made the one play in the L.A. game against the Chargers.
And it was a big play.
It was a huge play.
It got that game
really
going.
kind of changed the game in that play. So good for him.
And people thought it was going to change the season
exactly.
at the moment.
And that's the only play he's made all year. So to your point, it's beyond just the injuries. Like, the injuries are a big part of the story, and he hasn't been able to stay healthy. There's no question about that. But he has not been impactful when he's been on the field.
And again, circle this back to the Vrabel conversation.
Yeah.
All right? How did Vrabel react when A.J. Brown was traded? He got up from the table. He walked away. He needed to gather himself.
Yep.
And what they give him in place of A.J. Brown? They said, well, it's not replacing A.J. Brown. Well, technically, he was replacing A.J. Brown. Even if you weren't expecting him to replace 100% of A.J. Brown, you were expecting him to replace what? 75%? 80%?
Yeah.
What has he replaced? 4%? 2%?
Maybe not even that
6%?
much. Yeah. I mean,
Not that much. So it was a 100 for nothing. It was a giveaway. I mean, they got something else in the trade. I don't know what pick that was or whatever. But in terms of premier receiver, they thought he was a guy who could do a lot of the same thing. Catch that crossing pass and accelerate and run away from people. And we've seen him do that 5 times.
Well, and I don't know that I'm willing to go flat out bust yet, but he's not going to be a number 1 wide receiver for the Titans. I mean, at this point, I think you'd be thrilled if he became a number 2 for you, and I have no confidence that that's going to happen.
Gravy guy.
And like you said, gravy guy. And if you approach this offseason and part of your thought process is if you're Carthon and Vrabel, well, Burks is a part of our wide receiver room, I think that's a huge mistake.
Absolutely.
Whether it's T. Higgins or whether it's anybody else in free agency, the draft, I know you got to get a left tackle in there, but you need to draft a receiver high. If Burks can stay healthy and put something together next year and he proves that he's a player, that's great. But you can't plan on that.
And they need 4 things high, and they have 2 high picks.
Exactly. 615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on Treylon Burks. Titans players that have the most to prove outside of the quarterback and Will Levis. More on the Titans coming up next. We'll get to Peter King coming up at 5:15, so make sure you're tuned in for that. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com. Ian Safar here with us on this Friday afternoon. Rexrode totally abandoned us for the last 2 hours of the show. He's going home. He's got his shrine to Stillman built in the corner over there. It's been beautiful.
I like this Ian. I'm putting Nick on notice.
Nick, better watch out.
Hope
Ian's
Nick's
taking
listening.
it. Ian's taking everything
Hey,
over.
I have to deal with Jared every day, so you know.
There's that.
Well, you ought to put in for a
just,
transfer.
I'm just
When I saw the
happy to be here.
I saw the show grid we put together, and Rexrode put in the first segment immediately bringing up something about Stillman. I was like, there's something about it. When PK gets in here, he's just got to go over the top with Stillman praise. It's unbelievable. Scared of the rant. Loves him some Jared Stillman. It's beautiful. Well, Peter King coming up at 5:30.
If you missed it, after this show is over, you should go back and listen to the top of the show where I broke down Jared Stillman's audience. Or I could quickly revisit it. Should we quickly revisit it?
Let's quickly revisit it.
11.5% of Stillman's audience are his friends, his family, other kids his age who think they might be able to get a show as he did, like crafting crazy conspiracy theories.
Okay.
Like that Mike Vrabel had Terrell Williams coach a preseason game because the NFL told him to. And women who he's lied to about his salary. That's 11.5% of his audience.
Okay.
65% of his audience listen out of habit. They're like me biting my nails. They don't want to do it, but they just can't stop.
That's right.
15%, Joe thought this was high, they have broken radios.
Okay.
When I drive here, I see a lot of old cars. I passed like a Gremlin. Those cars still have you have to dial the radio, a knob.
Yeah.
And those knobs break. I mean, those cars are falling
Just
apart.
right off.
15% broken radios. And then 8.5% are people with podcast issues. Like they're Bluetoothing,
phone won't download it. iCloud's full.
Bluetoothing their podcast, but it won't work. And so they're stuck listening to Jared. That's Jared's audience breakdown.
I just want to double check that your Columbia math made it to 100% there, and you did. So I'm proud of you.
Yeah,
Way to
and
go.
I scratched that out in the car at some red lights. And red lights, by the way, when I say red lights, I mean lights that are red. Everybody else down here says red lights. They just mean lights.
It's the stoplights.
Yeah.
Just
And
all of them.
A light that
Doesn't matter
has
what
3
color it is.
colors, they just call them red. And they drive like they're all red. Yeah, they stop at all of them, whether they're green, yellow, or red. They stop.
My favorite thing my favorite roadway thing happened on the way down here. There's a wreck on the other side of the road, and people on the other side, separated by a barrier, are having to stop and just sit there and listen. Oh my goodness!
I
they
hope that's
wrecked
not
each
Bob.
other. It's unbelievable.
Bob drives that car. I have to ask Phyllis when I get home if Bob was in an accident, in a wreck. Excuse me.
Peter King joining us at 5:30. A little bit of a scheduling adjustment, an audible, if you will. So Peter King coming up at 5:30
from Pittsburgh.
Looking forward to that. Here on the program. Taking your thoughts, 615-737-1025. Not very many people a fan of Treylon Burks on the text line.
No, he's got no fans left.
Yeah. It's I do feel bad
used
for
up
him
his-
because I agree with you. Like I think everything you wanted to see him do in the offseason, he did, and it just hasn't worked. So like in some ways I do feel bad for him because I mean you see some guys that just don't put in the necessary work, and I don't think that that's been the case with Treylon Burks. Although it does baffle me how he can look as good as he looked in the preseason, and then when games come around, be a total non-factor the way that he has.
In Minnesota, as soon as he, reached out and went down on that somersault catch and got up and, took a couple steps and went back to the ground, a lot of us thought, here it goes. It's, and that could have been anybody on that day. It could have been an offensive lineman and drills or whatever. But, the NFL just eats people up. And he's one of these guys that things just haven't trended well for. Is there a possibility, he comes back next year and he looks great and everything falls in place? It happens sometimes. That guys just – have a couple bad, unlucky years at the beginning and things go right. But generally, the best predictor of your future is your recent past. And, there aren't many examples of Titans who have had Treylon Burks' start who have
blossomed.
A.J. Brown's finish.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often.
Especially at receiver.
How ugly do you think this is going to get on Monday night? I mean, we broke down the matchup a little bit earlier, but I'm looking at this, and on the defensive side, you got no Jeffrey Simmons in this game. Looks like you're not going to have Christian Fulton. And say what you will about Fulton, but not having him in this game I think is a big deal when you've got Waddle and Tyreek Hill on the other side. You know, defensively, your best playmaker out in Simmons. Offensively, you haven't been able to block anybody all year. You certainly haven't been able to block anybody on the road. Dolphins are third in the NFL in sacks so far this year. They got a lot of talent on the defensive side. Now, they've also given up some points in some games defensively this year too. But this just, to me, has all the makings of a bloodbath coming up on Monday night.
Yeah, I mean, I think universally people think it's going to be very ugly, and I don't disagree. I mean, obviously what they want to do, what they should do is try to slow it down with Henry. That sounds very basic. Here's a paragraph from Blake Bedingfield's preview at paulkuharsky.com that kind of, to me, adds some meat to why the Henry strategy could give them a little bit of hope. He said, Mike McDaniel is impatient and doesn't like a slow-moving game. So make him sweat out a game that limits his offensive touches, slows the game down, and play a more physical contest than one of speed, space, and explosive plays. So that impatient idea takes it a little bit further. He's not going to just say, okay, well, they're slowing it down and they just had a 13-play drive keyed around Henry and we'll go about our thing. It might force him to act irrationally at some point if you're having any early luck with that.
Right.
And then if they're a little bit irrational out of that impatience, maybe you steal a turnover or force a bad special teams play or something like that. And out of that comes your hope and a little bit of doubt from them, like, we're taking this a little bit too lightly or whatever like that. That idea of impatience from him is the one thing that, if you're looking for a kernel of hope from the Titans, comes to me. And I don't know if you've been watching. I've just lucked into it 2 weeks in a row, not looking for the in-season Hard Knocks, but because I turn on the TV on a Tuesday night and I'm like, Monday Night Football's over. What's on? And one of the first things I do is talk to my TV and say HBO to go see if there's a decent movie on to watch. And then I see that Hard Knocks is on in a couple minutes. And so I set a reminder, and I've watched it 2 weeks in a row. And I really like McDaniel. But I can totally see this impatience that Blake is talking about.
Yep.
And his quirkiness. And I think he's one of the most interesting characters in the league right now. But he wants it his way, and he wants it his way as ASAP. And I could see like him being the kind of guy that drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And my desk is a mess. I don't know how you live. But this is a guy that if he left his office and you moved a piece of paper, he would come in and immediately move the piece of paper back to where it was.
If he saw Rexrode's typical setup over here, he would lose control of himself.
Yeah. And by the way, you sitting in the middle when all three of us were here is much better for my sight line to be able to look at both of you. You in the middle is
I'm here to serve you.
Far better.
Yeah.
I wasn't saying that.
Yes.
I was just saying I appreciate it. I like it.
615-737-1025, our phone number. We got a lot of your thoughts to get to on the Titans coming up next. We'll do that. What do you make of the matchup against the Dolphins? Your thoughts on Treylon Burks?
And Ian's under a lot of pressure because Peter King has a new phone number, and I'm friendly with Peter King from the Hall Committee in a lot of years. So I'm going to give him this number, but I insist he give it to no one else. If Jared Stillman somehow bothers Peter King, my neck is on the line. So Ian's trustworthiness is going to be put to question.
Can Ian pass the test? That's what we're going to find out as well. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, live from our 102.5 The Game studio, brought to you by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Robby Stanley, Paul Kuharsky, Ian Safar here with you on this Friday. We'll have Peter King coming up at 5:30. Looking forward to that conversation with him. Right now, talking Titans, taking your thoughts, 615-737-1025. Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in Mark Anthony in Clarksville. Mark Anthony, thanks for calling in. What's going on?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Hey, one factor that's going to kill us, which has been killing us all season, is our offensive line. They couldn't stop my 1984 high school team defense, which I was on at 5'9", 170 pounds. Who's that doing the statistics on Robby's? Jared's fan base?
That's Paul. Robby? That's PK.
Hey,
it's Kuharsky.
Okay.
Are you 11.5%?
I am in the. I forgot what percentage I was in. I may have missed that, but I had to get past the Jared Stillman's voice. I'm a legit fan.
How long did that take?
Got some good. Say again.
How long did that take?
Oh man, a year.
That sounds pretty quick to me.
After I did that, then I was okay. But hey, can you come up with a stat for me?
Well, it depends. We're not Google.
What's going on? What stat do you want?
Stats. How many times did the Titans messed up a play because the offensive line couldn't stop a gang of terrorists and Tannehill or Levis got sacked?
That's a fascinating question that I think you could spend tonight on the computer research.
Thanks for the call, Mark Anthony. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Ask Jeeves.
Paul, your response.
Yeah.
Ask Jeeves. Good pull.
Yeah, I don't have any data on that.
The offensive line is not very good.
Track.
I think we know that.
Yeah.
Offensive line is not very good. There's been many plays that have been blown up this year.
He is not. Mark Anthony is not the first person to point out that the offensive line is not good. That's been going around for some time.
I have heard that. Let's go back to our 102.5 The Game phone line. Welcome in Ralph.
That was a little rough.
Ralphie,
do better than that.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening. Do better than that.
All right. I just heard you were saying, like, Chris Fulton might affect the game. Is that correct?
Yes, because the guys behind him are worse than Christian Fulton.
Correct.
Well, there's no worse than Christian Fulton. Sorry to say that. I mean, a couple days ago, Rexrode say Eckerman, he wasn't bad until this year, and now I'm hearing that. I mean, y'all need to change the mindset in Nashville sport, because keeping this kind of mindset is not going to have a champion team in Nashville. I mean, there is no worse than Christian Fulton. I mean, what you've been watching.
Well, Christian Fulton listen, I am the mindset that you're looking for. Christian Fulton was horrible for several games at the beginning. He settled down and did better. Then he leveled off. He got pulled out of a game because he was turning away tackles. He's not very good, but the Titans don't have a third cornerback who's any good.
You know who's worse than Christian Fulton? Trey Avery.
Trey Avery's worse, and Eric Garrard is worse. So McCreary's a good nickelback, and Murphy Bunting is a satisfactory corner. And after that, they don't have anything. And I've been on Craig Aukerman. Look, I know Stillman is on him because he's an emotional fan who, it feels like somebody took his blankie away. I've been documenting Aukerman's press conferences for years, at which he's taken no personal blame for anything that's gone wrong. And I think he's a very, very average coach who got a punter hurt and lost the game for them and suffered his fate for it. So I don't know what you're complaining about from me. You can complain to Joe when Joe actually does his job, but he's not doing it for these 2 hours.
Thank you, Ralph.
Yeah. Okay.
PaulKuharsky.com.
Well-informed news for the Titans, PaulKuharsky.com. We had a couple doozies in a row.
Let's see if we can. Name?
It was Ralph.
See
if we can make it 3.
Check
Dylan?
me out, Ralphie.
Dylan, welcome to the program. Thanks for calling in.
Dylan, let's start off here. Do better than those two guys.
Hey, guys, I'm probably going to get ridiculed. Obviously, I'm third in line here. I was coming in to state a case for the Titans to beat Miami. So now,
Well, let's hear it. I'd love to hear a good case.
honestly, every single time the Titans are counted out against, I'm talking about like the Rams or the Bengals or, even that 2019 championship run. The Titans, for some reason, feast upon, we'll never be able to win. And Mike Vrabel, with all his bulletin board material, mumbo jumbo, whatever. They get hype off of that for some reason. So, guys, I'm just going to call the game 28-17. For some reason, I think the Titans are going to pull this one out.
All right. I'll give you a couple examples where this wasn't the case. October 15th in London against Baltimore, they were not going to be able to win, and guess what? They did not win. And November 19th at Jacksonville, they were not going to be able to win, and guess what? They lost 34-14. Those were two situations where they were not going to be able to win, and they, in fact, did not win.
I think we're about to go 3 for 3.
I'm terrified for Nick Folk to be the punter, too, to be honest with you.
He's not going to be the punter. They've got
out there. Let's see.
They've got a punter.
Thanks for the call, Dylan.
I don't know his name, but he'll be activated
Ty
on
something.
Sunday. Yes. Zettner or
Nick
something
Folk
like that.
hopefully will not be punting.
He's not punting. If he's punting, they got another punter hurt. The replacement for Craig Aukerman Tom Quinn got a punter hurt also.
I'm rooting hard for a special teams touchdown for the Titans this week, and we could just point right to coaching again. Give me a special teams touchdown. Punt return.
What if they blocked the punt for the first time since Tim Shaw did it in 2012?
What do you make of the Kyle Phillips healthy scratch part of this last week? It looks like it could be this week,
I
too.
will say Kyle Phillips said this week, to his credit, he's got to do more to earn his way on the field, in terms of making himself more valuable as a blocker downfield and all of that. It's not really a straight Burks for Phillips replacement, though. If Burks is only playing that many snaps, it feels that way. But Kyle Phillips' route to being on the field is that he's a punt returner who can't catch punts.
Yeah, it's not good.
So that's the main route for Kyle Phillips to get on the field, and he's been replaced at that by somebody who's only dropped one punt and managed to recover it. So, things aren't looking very good for Kyle Phillips. I thought, here's the thing, who's Will Levis's number 2 guy after Hopkins?
It's NWI.
Yeah, but I don't think he's as good with NWI as Tannehill was, and I thought Phillips was kind of making a bid for it. I think that the last time he played, it was only one target or one catch for 2 yards, and then out. So his bid seems to be over, and yeah, it's NWI by default. And don't get me wrong, NWI for what he does is fine, but they need to upgrade, that spot and get more out of that guy.
No question about that. And then there's the other side of this that just scares the crap out of me if I'm a Titans fan. Everybody's been trying to stop Tyreek Hill all year. 93 catches, 1,481 yards, 12 touchdowns. Looks like he's going to become the first wide receiver to reach 2,000 yards in the season. And that's why not having Christian Fulton out there, by the way, is a big deal. You need everybody you can get.
A lot of people joking he's going to get those 500 yards on Monday night. Just half.
252 touchdowns. That'd be a tough one. Coming up next, we'll be joined by Peter King. We'll get his thoughts on the Titans, his thoughts on Mike Vrabel and Will Levis, and much more. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com. Ian Safar here with you on this Friday evening. And we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and say hello to the great Peter King of NBC Sports, Football Morning in America. Peter, good afternoon. What's going on? Thanks so much for taking time to be with us.
I'm doing well. Thanks a lot for asking me, guys. How you doing?
We're doing great. Really appreciate you you spending some time with us this afternoon.
Sure.
So, Peter, we've talked a lot about Mike Vrabel. There's all sorts of rumors flying around about him, and we'll get to that coming up here in just a few minutes. But overall on the field, the Titans lose 7 games in a row to close out last season. They're 4-8 right now, and things have not gone well for them on the field this year. How do you view Mike Vrabel as a coach, the job that he's done to this point, and where things could be heading here with the Titans?
Well, I find it interesting when you look at coaches who are really, really good coaches. Mike Vrabel is one. I'm in Pittsburgh right now. I was at the Steelers game last night. I'm doing a story, kind of an unrelated story for Football Night in America. But you land in Pittsburgh and you listen to the fans and you run into them on the way to the stadium. When are we firing Tomlin? How can we get rid of Tomlin? He's, it's over for Tomlin. He's just not that good anymore. Blah, 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 blah. So anyway, I just start saying, sometimes I feel like I'm in an alternate universe. And I don't mean in any way to disrespect what the fans think, what the fans want. I get it. I totally understand it. But it's hard to win in the NFL. And when I hear a lot of people say, okay, Vrabel, he's gone past his expiration date in Tennessee, and who can we get and all that stuff. Now, it's nowhere near the way it is in Pittsburgh, because in Pittsburgh, I think they want Tomlin gone tomorrow. But I'm just saying that I think there's an awful lot in today's football world that is impatient and is not willing to put up with losses. And, everybody, it's like in New England, fire Belichick. And now I understand that. He's going to be 72 years old next year. It's really been 4 years post-Brady that they've got nothing done. Might be time to move on. I get it. But in my opinion, I don't think Vrabel should go anywhere. And if for some reason he does go somewhere, they better get really good compensation for him.
Do you buy the idea that if Belichick, in fact, is moved or fired, that Robert Kraft would covet Vrabel and try to negotiate with Amy Adams Strunk for him?
It wouldn't surprise me, Paul, but I have zero inside information on it. I just don't know. I think it makes a lot of sense for them, for the Patriots, to look at Mike Vrabel without any question. But, and this is a very big but, if I'm the Patriots, there's absolutely no way I'm trading my first-round pick for a coach. Too valuable. I might trade next year's, or I might trade a 2 and a 2. I don't know, because draft picks now are so ridiculously enticing and important that you just don't want to get rid of them. So I certainly don't think that the Patriots would trade their first-round pick for Mike Vrabel. I have no idea what they would do, but I think that Robert Kraft right now really, I think that he really wants to start building this team back up through the draft. And they've drafted poorly. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were interested in Vrabel, but I don't know that they would be willing to make a monumental trade to get Vrabel.
Ren Carthon's a man of mystery here still. Been kind of in the background outside of a couple stories that he's done. kind of, very narrowly. Do you know him, or what do you know of him, and what do you think? One of the things that has led to some of the rumors about Vrabel maybe being disgruntled is the idea that it's kind of a forced marriage, and that those two haven't gotten off to a great start.
I don't know, Paul. Honestly, I don't know that. I had a long conversation, with Rand Carthon, in the spring, and I don't think I've talked to him since then. I will say this, and I wrote this a couple of times, that just my feeling. I understand, I suppose, why they didn't trade Derrick Henry at the trading deadline. But, and Paul, you'll have to check my math on this. I think the Titans are going to have something like 2 picks in the top 110 of this draft.
That's about right.
This is a team that needs draft picks. And in my opinion, it would have been a lot smarter to get a 3 if they could have, and I think they could have, for Derrick Henry, rather than keep him and just, I don't want to say run him into the ground. He's a great player, and he's going to help you win games. But the fact is, he's not going to help you win games when you get good again. And so it's all well and good to have this guy and to be loyal to him and him to be loyal to the franchise. I thought that was a missed opportunity right there. Now, who knows? Maybe they'll be able to get something decent for him, at some point in the future. I don't know. But I thought that was a missed opportunity. I know the Ravens were interested in him at the trading deadline, and I think there were other teams interested in him, and I think they should have done something, because he's not going to help them win in 2025, but the 88th pick in the draft in 2024 certainly might have.
Peter King of Football Morning in America, kind enough to join us on Robby and Rexrode afternoon edition. Speaking of Derrick Henry, a lot of conversation here about what kind of Hall of Fame chance he has at this stage. Just past 9,000 yards, approaching 100 touchdowns, but in a lot of ways maybe the last back of his kind, not a third down guy, not much of a receiver at all. I know it's hard as a Hall of Fame person to kind of gauge somebody's career before it's over, but, Nashville fans love him and think he's automatic. I've tried to talk to them about that not being the case at this stage. What kind of meat do you think is left on the bone for him, and what's the status of running backs of this era?
It's a good question. I think that one of the guys whose cause who I think has a good argument for the Hall of Fame, probably not many other people would, is Tiki Barber, because I think he dominated. If you look at the amount of time, say 3+ years, that a running back was really dominant for, they were dominant in different ways, obviously, but Tiki Barber and Derrick Henry have some similar numbers in terms of being dominant, and everybody's going to say, oh my God, Derrick Henry's so much better than Tiki Barber. Well, before you say that, you got to look at the numbers. And Tiki Barber had 3 really great years toward the end of his career, and he had some very good years as well. But if you were to tell me, I spent some time with Cam Hayward the last couple days in Pittsburgh, and he's a guy, for some reason, and his mom, was talking about, guys he has played, and I think one of the things that's interesting is that Derrick Henry, honestly, is just a unicorn. He just is. There are not many running backs in this century who consistently have produced with the punishing force of Derrick Henry. He's a 1970s running back playing in the 2000s. And Paul, I think he's got a really good chance. I don't know. We'll see what happens at the end, but his great years he was the most dominating back in the game. After Adrian Peterson, he clearly was the best back consistently over about a 5-year period. Usually when you become either a Hall of Famer or somebody who is absolutely knocking on the door maybe not the first or second year, but will eventually get in. So I think he's got a good shot.
Eddie George is one of the great horses
Yep,
in
he
history.
is.
He's on the list of 25 that will be trimming to 15 just for the second time. His 3.6-yard average is the big thing against him.
Yeah.
How much could he offset that by the fact that the sheer number of carries? I mean, he just took the ball over and over and over again for a team for a generation of that team.
He was so durable, and he was such an impact player. Now, he wasn't as punishing and as physically injurious as Derrick Henry was. He's just a really special, just sort of different back, almost, I don't want to say a unicorn in NFL history, but he's darn close. But Eddie George was the kind of runner who, for games at a time, could take over games and win them for this team. So I think he's got a good shot. I think that there are so many backs right now who, in terms of their impact on the game over a period of time, are similar. And I think if you look at Eddie George versus, say, Tiki Barber, you're going to be able to – there are some voters who might say, well, they sort of cancel each other out because they've done a lot of similar things, even though obviously they're different running backs. But Eddie George definitely has a case, and I think we're going to be talking about him in the Hall of Fame meeting room this year. We'll see, but I think he's got a good shot to get to the final 15.
Peter King with us here on Robby and Rexrode. Peter, what have been your impressions of Will Levis to this point at quarterback for the Titans? What do you think the Titans may have there?
Totally cool. Totally. I was at that game last night, and I only bring this up because there are some quarterbacks who you watch, who you say, that guy just does not look confident. And you watch Mitchell Trubisky, just doesn't look confident. Will Levis, from the moment he stepped behind center in Tennessee, he was going to fling it, and he looked like a confident quarterback. And I think that's 2/3 of the battle. Every quarterback who's going to get drafted high in a draft has the physical tools to win. What kind of mental tools do you have? And how willing are you to step right in with these guys that you've been watching on TV for years? How willing are you to step right in and to say, all right, guys, get on my back, we're going? I've been highly impressed with Will Levis, the person, and how bold he is. I think the one thing I would say about Levis is I think long-term, I think his accuracy and efficiency is going to tell the tale, of whether he's going to make it, of whether he's going to be good for a long time. There's no question mentally he's got it. Now you have to find out if physically and I think emotionally he's fine, but I think you have to find out if physically and he can be as efficient as he needs to be a long-term starter in the NFL. And I think the early signs are good.
Peter, you've been really kind with your time. Appreciate so much you taking time to be with us this evening, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Thanks a lot, Peter. Really appreciate it. Look
Paul.
forward to seeing you at the Hall of Fame stuff in January.
No problem. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Peter King, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. We got a lot to react to there. We'll do that. Coming up next, your final call for calls here on Robby and Rexrode. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Final segment of the day, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Thanks to Peter King for being with us in the last segment here. Lots of interesting stuff from Peter King there. I thought the Eddie George stuff, very fascinating there from Peter King. If you missed it, search Robby and Rexrode wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify. You can see the interview. We'll have that posted shortly with Peter King. What did you think of what he had to say about the Eddie George Hall of Fame case?
Yeah, I was surprised by that. I need to go look at the Tiki Barber stats. He's got, very close-up look at Tiki Barber from being a New Yorker in New York and connected most closely to the Giants. And I think Titans fans should find it encouraging what he said about Derrick Henry as well. So, look, there's all positives for the Titans right there. Thumbs up, unless you hate Mike Vrabel.
Well, there's that. Thumbs
up to Mike Vrabel. Thumbs up to Derrick Henry. Thumbs up to Eddie George. Thumbs up to Will Levis.
Yep.
And that Levis moxie is scoring with virtually everybody.
Agreed.
Right? So you can't take anything bad about where for a 4-8 team, that review right there was very good. I can't believe that somebody would have given the Titans a third for Derrick Henry, and I think the Titans would have taken a third for Derrick Henry. I heard secondhand that that was the line for the Titans, that the
third
Titans were waiting for a third rounder and would have made a move for a third rounder. And so perhaps they were only being offered a fourth rounder. I can't believe they could have gotten a fourth rounder for 11 games of Derrick Henry. Frankly. And Baltimore has done just fine running the ball with Gus Edwards and with an undrafted rookie free agent who finally got healthy and has stormed, you see highlights of him storming up the sidelines, which kind of just shows you why it wouldn't have been smart to give up a fourth rounder for Derrick Henry, who you can get just for no draft picks after the season's over if that's what you choose to do. But Titans fans should be very enthusiastic on a veteran sports writer like Peter King having all those good things to say. I personally will be surprised if Eddie George does make the final 15 just because it's such a crowded field and you've got to get 10 guys off of that list. But I'm certainly doing everything I can to make his case to get him in there. The ballot, I think, is December 19th. And my mailbox is full every day with supporting documents and videos and the like, which I'm taking part in for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Tom, who has been waiting patiently. Tom, thanks for holding with us. Thanks for calling in.
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity, Paul. Very much appreciate your comments before Peter King and the conversation you had with him. But I wanted to follow up on, I think Mike Vrabel, we've got a great head coach. But what I don't understand, it goes back to what you said about Craig Offerman, average coordinator. But I feel like that's all we have is average coordinators. And to my understanding, there's no salary cap to have a top-notch coordinator. And I'm thinking, isn't it true great coaches make good players look great? And we haven't, we had I think an average defense with Shane Bowen, and Jim Schwartz showed up, and I thought we became close to elite. Jim Schwartz disappears, and I think it looks like we're average again. Why is it that there's no salary cap? Why is it that we don't have top-notch offensive and defensive coordinators in your mind?
Well,
thanks for the call, Tom.
I don't know who. Okay, so people wanted him to go get Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah.
Now I don't know if we confirmed that he talked to Eric Bieniemy or not. He talked to Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy ultimately went back to Kansas City.
Where your quarterback is Patrick Mahomes, by the way.
Where your quarterback's Patrick Mahomes and where your play caller is Andy Reid. Look, he wants somebody that he's familiar with, who, and his thing also is to bring him up through his system. And so the guy who's going to replace Tim Kelly, if and when Tim Kelly is fired or does well enough to be promoted to leave, is probably on his staff. It's probably Charles London or Tony Dews.
Yep.
And that's just the way he operates. I've been told very reliably that Jim Schwartz did not do a great deal. He He came into meetings and things and made suggestions and reflected on things, or people brought him stuff and said, what about this or what about that, or gave him projects and the like. And I have no reason not to believe that.
And he was not on the field coaching the players.
No. He was an observer. But it's undeniable what the caller said.
Oh, yeah.
The defense was bad before he arrived, and it's been bad since he left. But it's also undeniable that we thought that Danico Autry and Harold Landry and Jeffrey Simmons and Arden Key would be the heart and soul, not just of the defense, but of the team.
Yeah.
And there have been games where they've touched the quarterback 2 and 3 times.
Yeah.
A majority of the games where they've touched the quarterback 2 and 3 times. And I don't really care how things are schemed up. Ultimately, those 4 guys are rushing against 5 guys and not winning.
Yeah.
And they're skilled guys. So I start with them. What is going on with Arden Key that he's not back there? And he's announcing he's a November, December guy. Well, guess what? November's over.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Jeffrey Simmons, you can't say a bad thing about in this town without everybody staring darts at you. But Jeffrey Simmons has had some dominant games and some dominant moments. But has he been dominant week to week? Absolutely not. Autry's the best of them, but he's not as good as he used to be. And Harold Landry's had a hard time making it back from his knee.
Yep.
I put that first and foremost on them, not on Shane Bowen.
Totally agree. PK, fun stuff, man. Thanks for being with us today.
Really enjoyed it. If you're out there this weekend, think about it every time you pull into an intersection. Don't block the box, and be sure to lock your locks.
We'll be back on Monday morning starting at 6 a.m. By the way, call in for some tickets. First caller, 615-737-1025. Before you could buy them to see Def Leppard, Journey, and Steve Miller Band at Nissan Stadium on Saturday, July the 20th. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.